And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time. It's bright and early. It's dark outside. Let's get right into it, man. This is my phone was off the hook. I know your phone was off the hook, and this is at popular demand. Sergeants are fed up, man. Bottom line is the NYPD Sergeants, known as the hardest working job. It is. You know, when I made lieutenant, and you realize, and John, I'm sure you thought the same thing. Like, wow. It really is the toughest job as a supervisor, and they deserve a lot more credit, especially right now, and they deserve the pay in their pocket. 516 Diecast, here we go. Shout out to you. $1.99, coffee and donuts. Lieutenants, PO up front, President duty. Thank you, sir. Outstanding. So, John, I mean, how would you feel? You're a newly promoted sergeant, and the senior cop makes more money than you. What do you think that does? What do you think that does for morale?
I agree with you. I think when you become a sergeant, you know if you have the characteristics to be a leader or not. You know almost immediately. You know if you have those characteristics. I don't care if you're a good sergeant. I don't care if you know everything that you need to know as a sergeant. I'm talking about if you have the spine to withstand all of the things that you're gonna encounter. Because make no mistake, anybody could say what they want. NYPD sergeants run the NYPD. This job does not exist without sergeants. You know, you deal with all of the stuff that come from the rank and file, the police officers, the detectives. You're directly dealing with them. And then you're dealing with all the political nonsense from up top. You might have to deal with some direction from your lieutenant or your captain, but more than likely, you're going to be the one dealing with the political ramifications of actually doing their job and your guys doing their job. So you not only do you have to supervise your job, you have to supervise your guys. You have to keep them safe from themselves. You have to train them. You also have to protect them, right? You know, so you're doing all of these things as a sergeant. You're running the entire precinct. So right now, if I'm a new sergeant, I'd be a little less angry than if I was an older sergeant. I'd be a little less angry than the guys that already spent 3 years going through every step, making less money than police officers. And I'm never getting that money back. I'm never getting that money back because currently the way the contract is set up is that the new guys go right to top pay. So you're a new sergeant, you get promoted, you go right to top pay. The guys that are trapped into this 4-year window prior to these contracts being settled, those guys, is about 1,200 of them, I think, maybe 1,600 of them. They're making less money than the people they supervise. Their responsibilities through the roof. Your commanding officer's calling you every day. He's blaming you for every 911 job that comes over. He's blaming you for every major that comes over. Every all the zeros hate you because they're like, oh, this guy's telling me to do my job. He doesn't just let me put my uniform on and drive around and waste gas. I can't believe you believe that guy. You believe him? He's not good. He forgot where he came from, and it's like, so I think it's the hardest job there is. But then when I look at the senior guys that never even dealt with any of that bullshit, they never even dealt with that. Like they went the steps like we all did, or maybe they were on the casting couch and they got SDS, so they never had to go through the steps. Whatever it is, what does that stand for? Slight Down syndrome? Yeah, that's what it stood for in IAB. I don't know about the rest of the bureaus, but some of you guys deserve it. Some of you guys are Sergeant Detective Squad. But if you're an IAB, more than likely your title is Slight Down syndrome, not a Sergeant Detective Squad. But with that being said, think about this now. You never even dealt with that stuff. You've been out of contract for a while, dude. You got cops making more money than you. You got detectives making more money than you. They're looking at this overtime list and they're like, whoa, you know why there's no sergeants and there's only cops, detectives, and lieutenants on it? I don't know. I would start asking my union why.
We're laughing, but it's sad right now. And honestly, it is sad. And you explained it well, right? You explained it well because ultimately it's about 1,200 sergeants that are actually affected and most of those 1,200 are actually senior to the new sergeants. So I think you broke it down and explained it well. Which I would say, roughly, the SBA has around 5,000 sergeants, approximately, give or take. Sometimes it could be in the 4,000, sometimes it's more. The manpower, I'm sure, is probably even lower right now, as what we know. I mean, I know they're promoting a lot of cops as sergeants, and the sergeants are working as cops. But I would say, let's just say approximately 5,000. And if the case is 1,200 are not being compensated properly, that's about 0.25% of the sergeants that are actually working right now. That's astronomical numbers right now. I think it's truly sad, but I think it's an epic fail on the part of the union. The union, again, they're almost like the Democrats that are out there when it comes to politics, that they created the problem, and now they want to treat the symptoms. It's almost like the Munchausen syndrome. And the union created this problem. They allowed it to happen. So ultimately, the union is responsible for this. They hold complete responsibility and liability for this. Rich Rod, shout out to you. Coffee and donuts. Here we go. $20. Good morning, John, Eric, and everyone on the channel. That's right. Shout out to friends and listeners. Thank you so much for being with us yesterday with mayoral candidate Jim Walden. I know yesterday we didn't engage too much on the chats, and we did get a lot of coffee and donuts, and we appreciate it. So we'll try to figure that out. We're going to bring him up for a follow-up eventually, maybe within the next couple of weeks or so. And we'll have either like a town hall on a live or possibly also on X-Base, maybe both. So with that being said, John, I just want to go back and reflect on the fact that I think this is another kill for morale. And ultimately, my hat's off. If you watch this, active, retired, you're a civilian member. You're a civilian. You have a family member that's a sergeant or an outside agency, someone that's a frontline supervisor. You know how hard they work. They're never home. It's a daunting task. You have to have the skills to manage the people below you, and you have to have the skills to manage everyone above you. And there's no doubt about it, John. Sergeants run the entire job. You go to a precinct, any precinct in the city right now, it's 2 sergeants that are running that command operationally. That's your desk sergeant and your patrol sergeant. We have those specialized units. I was specialized unit, so are you, John. But those 2 are the backbone of the entire precinct, and they run the entire precinct every day, and they're not getting compensated properly. It's sad. It really is.
Yeah, no, it's definitely sad. So yesterday there was a protest at Eric Adams' State of the Union for New York City, and so the protest there was numerous groups there, obviously, because like I said, Eric Adams is the ultimate uniter. He didn't get re-indicted yesterday, shocker for Thursday, but hey, next Thursday's coming, and like I said, this month's going to be a crazy month, and I'm hearing that some high-ranking NYPD officials may be arrested today, later in the day. So we'll see what happens with that. Again, it's just rumors, strong rumors, but we'll see. Hearing a lot of crazy things about 2 in particular that were tied up into this overtime sting. So sergeants were out there. I had put a post out. I said that the sergeants should be protesting at their union, not at Eric Adams. Now, I don't think that's a fair statement because I do think Eric Adams could end this in one day. However, I think the reason that they're in this situation and they continue to be in this situation falls upon their leadership. So upon that, we received numerous emails from active NYPD sergeants, furious about getting raised. And I think, I don't think we're going to read all of them, but we have a few of them that we highlighted that we'll go through. We're not going to put any identifying information, nothing of commands or anybody's names or who sent it like that. But I just found it very funny that I was like, wow. I'm like, these guys are pissed, man. And then I got a couple of calls from some good people that I supervised over the years that are now NYPD sergeants, and they kind of walked me through it from their perspective. So I think it's important to understand the contract process, and I think we did that when we were talking about the PBA. But for those of you that didn't watch this show then, and you're going to watch it now, what the Pat Lynch administration did was very unique because Pat Lynch is a very smart guy. Not only did he have a silver tongue, he was a very smart guy, and he gaslit you guys for over a decade, all of us, and he basically controlled the entire way the job got raises, not just for the PBA, for everybody. And I believe that the pay disparity between the NYPD and Nassau and Suffolk grew significantly, actually started and grew significantly under Pat Lynch, because in my opinion, that time he was working for the city and his own pockets and his own benefits and his own children's future instead of his members. I believe, the fake John Kennedy style, I want to be Mr. President, that stuff. He was really working for himself. He was a liberal Democrat. He was never a conservative. But with that being said, when the city negotiates now, Pat Lynch was smart in this. Pat Lynch said that we're going to go in first, meaning that they're going to be the first to set the pattern. Once the pattern is bargained for and set, when it relates to NYPD contracts, it's over. The city takes that money and they allocate it for all the unions and they put it in a bank. They have never went backwards and changed that. The only way for your union to break that pattern, which Pat Lynch never did, Pat Hendry didn't do, they gave away your retirement and health care. And the only reason that we still have it till today is because of Mariam Pizzatola and retirees. It's not because of you guys. Because you guys were like, oh, yeah, this job, you got health care for life, but we'll give it away for you for 2%. So no one ever broke the pattern. What you do is once you set the pattern's set. Now, if you want to break that pattern, the only way to break the pattern is through givebacks. And no union has ever broken the pattern. I'm going to say it again because a lot of people don't understand me. I'm talking to you, Pat Lynch. I'm talking to Pat Hendry. I'm talking to you, Vinny. I'm talking to every single one of you. No one has ever broke the pattern. And I'll show you it, and you could gladly come on here and prove me wrong. And I will sit here and say, I'm wrong if you prove me wrong. But I'm telling you right now, no union ever broke that pattern, and nobody's going to come on here and debunk that. Eric, what do you think? Is it possible to break the pattern?
No, I mean, we've done several episodes in the past. I would say probably more than a year ago now when we started, probably maybe almost 2 years ago, we started reporting on the unions. And we talked about the epic fails. And one of the epic failures that we did notice during the time we were reporting on the unions, especially these contracts, the unions, especially under Pat Lynch, wanted to give this impression that there's never any zeros. And we saw that there were several months that while these contracts were being implemented, that there were several months that until you actually get the contract ratified and get your back pay, that there were a few months that you're actually getting zeros. So if you look at how Pat Lynch was getting these contracts over the years, you're out of a contract for 5 years, and then that contract gets settled. And then there's usually a 3 or 4 month period sometimes that you're not getting that back pay. So that's almost like getting zero. And if you see that over time, 3 months over 5 different contracts, that's 15 months worth of zeros. I mean, John, you and I both established that and made that observation. So that, and according to Pat Lynch and that administration, and Pat Hendry is no different. He comes under the tutelage of Pat Lynch. There were some zeros. And again, what's unfortunate about this contract right now, or lack thereof, is in order to get these 1,200 sergeants, get this disparity completely removed and get them where they need to be, they're going to have to give some givebacks for a situation they should never have been put in the beginning. So this is an epic fail by the leadership. And not to just segue into a different topic, but let's understand what we're dealing with at this point. We have a union president that was imprisoned for embezzling money from the SBA. And let's not play babe in the woods. How is it that Ed Mullins is the only one with his hand in the cookie jar, and no other unions have their hand in the cookie jar, and the treasurer for the SBA has no accountability, no liability? How is it just one man from the union?
The vice president moves over. The vice president moves over, and the treasurer gets promoted.
To me, it sounds like a complete setup and a hit job to me. Honestly, I'm not excusing Ed for it. I'm not excusing Ed Mullins. But I find it hard to believe that Ed Mullins was a one-man show. Just as we see the appearance of impropriety, potential corruption going on in the NYPD right now, which I say why the entire upper echelon is completely compromised. We know how the NYPD works and how the information rumor line works. There's no way that no one is hearing these grumblings, especially in the union. I find it hard to believe that Ed Mullins is completely isolated to himself and it was a one-man show. John, what do you think about that?
I mean, listen, I don't know. I don't know the details of what happened in that office or what didn't happen in that office. I know that it's the same way that I'm saying that there's no way in hell that John Shell should slip over to chief of department, take his mentor spot. I say no way that the vice president should take over the president's spot if the president was embezzling money. I say no way that the treasurer should become the vice president if the president was embezzling money. And not because I know that they're involved or I care that they're involved. I have zero confidence in your ability to run this union because you have proven you failed. You've proven you failed. Whether you were involved in it or you didn't know about it, it doesn't matter. You have to go. You shouldn't belong there. So, like, again, that this is the fault of the unions, because if I was a sergeant, I would have called for a vote of no confidence in the entire board right then and there. I would have said, wait a minute. You guys are in charge of $1 million, millions of dollars. And we were embezzling money out of this. It was proven guilty. He pleaded guilty to it. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. Yeah, listen, maybe it's, you guys could do you could be the toughest, you could do the toughest job in the world too, like the rest of us. But it's time for an election. It's time for you guys to go. You guys voted no confidence. You guys should all not be there. I don't know what those bylaws look like. That's another problem with the unions. They write these bylaws to create this legacy of nepotism to even be involved in the unions. You need to be a delegate for 2 years to run for president. You need to be this, that, blah, blah, blah. That needs to be changed. You guys all should know your bylaws and go through your bylaws and rip those things to shred. And, it's sorry, you are the union, not the president. Not the people wearing pinky rings and going out, driving $700 lease cars that you guys are paying for, getting tickets on those cars that you guys are paying for, driving back and forth through congestion pricing that you guys are paying for. You think they care if you're paying congestion pricing both ways because you're on the midnight? Oh, yeah. I'm going to get clocked on my way in and I'm going to get clocked in on the way out. So I'm actually paying 2 tolls because I work at midnight. So I'm being screwed. Do you think they really care? No, they're going to Mo, we're working on it. Mo, we're working on it. But listen, I don't want to get too off. No vote and no confidence. But listen, this is the bottom line. The bottom line is this. The pattern was set. There were 6 months of zeros. Boo-hoo, even though they told you there were no months of zeros, there were months of zeros, like we told you when that contract went on. You're being gaslit. There's zeros. So what? Boo-hoo-hoo. Sometimes it's worth it to take the zero. Sometimes it's worth it to take the zero, especially if now you're going to be out of contract. I believe the sergeant's contract ended in 2019. Eric, am I off by that? Could be 2018, 2019, something around.
It's about 5 years right now out of a contract. Yeah. It's either 2019 or 2020.
So what are the ramifications of, this contract was significant too with the 6 months of zeros. It was a significant pay raise. I think right now top pay sergeants are somewhere at like 98 and they'll go to like, I think with everything in their package, like 135 or something like that prior to overtime, something around that. Cops right now are making 115, so think about that. You're stuck in that raise. You're stuck in your old raises, which really I think is right around 115, 116, something like that. So you're stuck in there. So regardless of where you are in this, you're at top pay, you're fighting to get through those 3 steps, your cops are making more money than you. What are the ramifications of not taking that raise? Because you're not getting anything different than anybody else. What are the ramifications of not taking that?
I'll tell you right now, Bones 1999 calls it right here. Here's the ramifications. And I'm sure other people think of the same thing. So Bones 1999, you called it. These guys have lost 3 years of pension interest. It's actually more than that. We identified it's probably about 5 years of pension interest and deferred compensation contributions. And the bigger their retro, the bigger the tax hit. These guys are getting screwed. Shaking my head. Yeah, no doubt about it. Absolutely. The tax ramifications are substantial, and also put you in a very precarious position. Because I mean, these guys love this idea of a retro check, but when you get that retro check, it puts you in an odd spot, right? You can only make 20% more in a year to actually have that pensionable, at least for tier 2, right? So I'm sure there's plenty of guys here that are affected by tier 2. So if you're a tier 2, you're in a position potentially you're about to retire, and you have a year that you make a substantial amount of retro, and maybe you're not ready to retire that year. Well, that can hurt you to retire the following year, because that's a substantial amount of more money you're going to make because of that retro. And the tax ramifications put you in a different tax bracket. You're not putting interest. John, I think you said, because you were doing the numbers, because you had to leave about 2 years prior to your actual pension. How much interest did we say that you're losing in a year?
Oh, you're talking about my personal situation?
For your situation, we're talking about just some ideas.
I mean, if I would have stayed on, I think I was making I think it was like close to $50,000 a year in interest alone, and that was without the extra money being put in. That's just if I never contributed, but I did the ITHP and the 50% additional, so I contributed. So you figure 2 years of not earning on 8 1/4,
and it's compounded.
And it's compounded, so I don't want to say you'll be out $100,000, but you'll be out like a significant amount of money, maybe, especially when your numbers are big later on in your career, like mine were, like yours probably are. Like if you've been doing the ITHP and the 50%, think if you're adding another $10,000 into your pension for 3-4 years, 5 years now. And you're getting 8 1/4 on that, how it's compounded, it probably is about $100,000 just in interest. Never mind what you took home. Never mind what went into your ITHP. And by the way, I don't know, I'm seeing good things in this market. We might come down a little bit after inauguration, but I don't know, man. I'm looking at all my accounts and they're all up. So think about that 5 years of going up, even under this horrible administration.
And I think Bones 1999 makes a great analysis here that you're losing those contributions into your deferred compensation. Or maybe, listen, everyone has a different financial plan. Maybe you're not putting money into deferred compensation. Maybe you're putting your money into crypto. But the bottom line is you're losing this substantial amount in your pay scale, your paycheck, personal paycheck, to put into your investments, however your financial plan. If your financial plan is through the pension, if you're tier 2, if you're tier 3, I don't think they have those opportunities right now. 50% additional and ITHP. I know they've been fighting to get it back, but if I'm correct at this point,
they've been fighting to get a contract.
Yeah, let's give the money to Kathy Holzer because she'll sign off on the bills. Yeah, see how that backfired.
That was a good investment.
But I'm pretty sure they don't have those opportunities. So if you're tier 2, you have those options. You have the ability to put money also in deferred compensation. Right now, I would definitely buy in gold and silver, and you have crypto. But the bottom line is they don't have that money to put in. So you'll lose a substantial amount of interest that you can make. So this idea that you're getting retro, and some people love the idea because they see it very short-sighted. But the tax ramifications that you pay in that year, it puts you in a separate tax bracket. It's sorry, alarm going off.
Your wake up alarm, bro. Sweet.
But it's a substantial amount. But one thing you brought up, I just want to go back to what you said, because we provide the evidence on this podcast, and I would say it's about almost 2 years ago. Almost 2 years ago already, when John and I were in the early stages in the infancy of the podcast, we were reporting on the union. And if you go back, we went back into union leadership in the 90s, even before Pat Lynch. And they never broke the pattern. So that's so important to understand that the pattern is set and you don't break the pattern. And if you look, this idea that Pat Lynch sold and this whole gaslighting, for you to believe you're not getting zeros. And it was almost like they were able to hide these zeros under a pillow and you won't see it until these two wacko lieutenants came out and said, oh, look, you get it, right? These two radical lieutenants, until everyone started to say, well, you know what? The stuff they're saying is not crazy. It's actually legit. Because they've been gaslighting you, because these guys are filling and serving themselves, and they're filling their own pockets. But it's a shame what they did. And now, to get the sergeants to where they need to be, there would be substantial givebacks. I know some people are saying potentially it would be 2 days to give back. It's going to be a lot more than that. But the sad part about it is you're losing that compounded interest in your pension. The ultimate goal should be to maximize your pension for retirement, put money into investments, get that interest, but you're not getting that. Giving you yesterday's dollar today is not helping you. And you're fighting inflation. And with the compounded inflation that we have right now, you might as well throw that money in the garbage. And I always say this, and I believe this. Cash is trash. If you have cash sitting in your account, it's trash. It needs to be invested. Your money needs to make you money. But if that money's not moving anywhere, you're not getting anything out of it. And that's one of my arguments I used to make with people is why stay after 20? Because when it comes to the variable supplement, everybody loves the variable supplement. If you stay to 25 years on the job, that variable supplement doesn't get invested somewhere to make interest. It's still the same $12,000 per year. They give you $60,000, now you're getting taxed on that $60,000, and you're kind of forced to put it into something. So you have to think about is how is your money making you money?
Well, the bottom line is this. So if you're in tier 3 and you can't do the ITHP and 50% additional, and by the way, you're never gonna, unless Kathy Hochul really needs to win the next election or a Democrat really needs to win and, and the water boys could convince her to do so, which I doubt. I don't think they're convincing unless she just gets a brilliant idea in her head. Maybe she looks at a tweet from me or Eric or watches the podcast. I don't think it's happening because they haven't convinced her to do absolutely anything. Even give you guys a carve out for congestion pricing, which is honestly, I think, a no-brainer for everybody, even the people that were supporters of congestion prices. And just think about that. You couldn't even get it. Why? Because like I told you, the people running your union don't really give a shit about you. They're already taken care of. You're paying for that toll, so don't worry about it. You're paying for their gas. You're paying for their nice fancy lease. They're getting a double salary. They don't care about the overtime. They're not standing out on the foot post. They don't care if you guys work 12-hour tours. So I think part of the contract was the 12-hour tours, a couple of months of zeros, and they were going to take 2 days away from new sergeants. Again, if you want something different, city's going to say, okay, no problem. This is the value of this. We need that value somewhere else. So you have to give us other givebacks. So the things that the city's asking for, they're unwilling to do. So, so what are we doing here? So we're just going to wait out till all of those people are out of those steps. All of the people that went through that steps never get recompensated. It's not like you're going to get retro for all that time you missed, that you were at top pay, that you weren't at top pay, but guys that made sergeant after you are at top pay. Your cops are making more money than you. You're never getting that money back, and the union's never going to fight for you to get that money. So in my opinion, what it looks like to me they're doing, they're stalemating with the city, which is a Lynch strategy. They're going to sit here and say how they bargained for you and how you didn't get a zero somehow, which is you are always going to get a zero, and the value of that contract is never going to change. It's never going to change. It's just you're either taking it from here or you're taking it from there. So what's going to happen is you're just going to be out of contract for 6-7 years. It is going to have cost you tons of money, regardless of the ITHP or not, because again, more money in your pocket. Your overtime rate is higher. You guys are doing a ton of overtime, so that's more money. That's more money in your 457 and your 401. Since you guys cannot do a 457 and since you guys cannot do the ITHP and the 50% additional, I'm not a financial advisor, but I would recommend that you have both a 401k and a 457, and you try to max them both out. And you should max them both out, because that is going to be your benefit in the future. Believe me, if you're a young kid on the job right now, or even if you're not, you have 7 years on, 8 years on, 9, and you have it, take my advice. Start doing this. You'll thank me later. You could send some coffee and donuts in a few years.
Well, I think the SBA sold out their members on every angle. In their contract negotiations. Ultimately, to make it to top pay as a sergeant, it's pretty much half your career. If the timing is right, the timing is completely perfect, it's half your career till you make it to top pay as a sergeant. I think that's pretty insane. Think about it. It's 5.5 years till top pay as a cop. So arguably, if you get promoted at the 5.5 year mark as a cop, it's now another 6 years, right? They say it's 5 years, but it's actually 6 years, right? Because it's the end of your 5th year till you make it to top pay as a sergeant with the last contract that they had. That's 11.5 years. Tier 3 retirement is 22 years. So that's a little more than half your career till you actually make it to top pay as a sergeant. That is pretty insane. So what are they doing? They're basically forcing you to take the lieutenant's test, right? Unless you get SDS. But that's the bottom line. I think that's terrible. More than half your career. So are these unions actually advocating for their men and women? No. That's why I say it's the Munchausen syndrome. They created the symptoms. They created the problem, and now they want to treat the symptoms. I think it's absolutely terrible for morale. Also, you're a senior sergeant. Now you're actually invested. You're a good leader. You're running the job. You're working your ass off, and you make less than someone who just got promoted, or you make less than the top paid cop. That's insane. That's completely upside down, and it's a failure. It's an epic failure on the unions that they have this ideology. You know what? Let's not have 2 months of zeros. I get it. You don't want to have an extended period of time to have zeros, but let's not have 2 months of zeros, so we don't give back 2 vacation days or something stupid to be in this position. That's absolutely ridiculous. And now here we are in union contracts and negotiations. They're going to spend $1 to make a quarter. It's absolutely ridiculous. It hurts every sergeant that's in this position. It doesn't help your pension. It makes it much more different for you. It makes it much more difficult. Again, when you're in a position that you receive these retro checks and you're close to retirement or you're in your retirement year, it could be beneficial. But if it's not your retirement year and you're going to retire the following year or the year after that, it could cause some real ramifications for you and could change the trajectory of your retirement because you can only make 20% more a year. And then the following year, and if you're tier 2, it's based on your last 12 months. Again, something else they haven't got awarded yet. Then you get tier 2A, right? Or vice versa. They don't have the opportunity to base it on their best 3 years or last 3 years. You still have the last 12 months. So if your last year is followed by a year of retro checks, that's a problem. It really is a substantial problem.
No, they're waiting for all of tier 2A to retire first, and then they're going to get them to tier 2. And then they'll be like, look what we won. Look what we did for you guys. The bottom line is this. The first union that set the pattern, that's it. It's over. It's it. It's gone. It's either you're going to give away some stuff or you're not. And who ultimately benefits from this fight? The city of New York, right? The union's taking your money. They're spending for the arbitration. They're spending all this money with their lawyers to represent you. And the city's saving millions and millions of dollars every year you're out of contract. So Vinny Valalong should get the Employee of the Year award for New York City. So I don't know what he's standing. He's winning Employee of the Year award. You guys are out there in the cold at the Apollo Theater protesting the mayor. Listen, the mayor could end it, but he can't if Vinny's unwilling to go to the table. So before I read the message that was recently put out to NYPD sergeants, I just want to read Logic Finest quote. I just want to get your thoughts on this. So Logic Finest says, "Good morning, everyone, Eric and John. I know you hear this question all the time, but does the Taylor law prevent the NYPD unions from negotiating effective contracts?" So the Taylor law is a name for, and I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, but it's a nickname for an actual law that's in New York. And what it is that it's illegal for unions to protest. Through collective bargaining, it makes it illegal that you could be imposed with either fines, not protests, excuse me. You could be hit with fines or arrest for work stoppages. So let's get this clear, because I don't know your opinion on this, Eric. I don't know that we've ever actually spoke about this, but I don't believe that cops should have the ability to strike in New York City either. I think it is a grave danger to public safety. I believe it's reckless endangerment. I believe that if a union president was actually calling for a work stoppage, they could potentially be put in handcuffs. And I believe that I would be able to articulate that crime. So do I think that that's a reason that they can't negotiate an effective contract? No, I don't think so at all. I think the reason they can't negotiate an effective contract is because you have the dumbest people, the most cowardly people running your unions. These people aren't negotiating car leases. You think they're negotiating your contract? They're walking into the dealership. I want that car. How much is it? Okay, great. You're walking into a dealership. You might be in your fourth dealership, and you know about the 10th time that this guy comes back to you with numbers, you're saying no. And you already know what you're spending. You're going in there, you're negotiating. I'm telling you right now, that is not, in my opinion, that is not a factor whatsoever. The police should not be allowed to do work stoppages. You will hold the city under siege. It will be too much power for a union president to wield. What do you think about that?
All right. I mean, I used to say it all the time, and I'll say it right now. If you shut down police services, the entire city would crumble in less than an hour. The entire city, forget about just crime in itself, just the car accidents alone would put the city in complete gridlock, and that would be a domino effect, and it would just be doomsday in New York City. There's no doubt about it. So, no, I don't think anyone expects them to strike. I think it's completely irresponsible. And absolutely, I don't expect the union presence. You know, as critical as I am of the unions or benevolent associations, I don't expect them to strike either, right? They would be held liable, and they would be sitting in jail, and rightfully so, because you just pushed amendments to actually put the city at risk, and it's complete negligence and it's recklessness, and you're leaving the city just to be in complete peril. But one thing is true about that is the argument can be made that if you have a mayor, and this is where I might actually give a little credit to Eric Adams, because I don't think Eric Adams is I believe at this point is not unwilling to sit down with Billy Vallalong. If you had a mayor that was completely unwilling to negotiate at all when it comes to contracts, and you're making absolutely no headway, well, then yes, of course, a strike is what gives a union or an organization leverage. So the police do not have that type of leverage. But the failure right now, and I get it, you know, they want to go out there and protest. And this is a time, I guess I'm going to sound like I'm defending Adams, but I'm not. But this is the reality. Why are the members of the SBA protesting outside of the Apollo Theater for Mayor Eric Adams? You should be standing outside the SBA building and protesting against Billy Vallalong, because he's the one that put you in this position and he's not willing to negotiate. And sometimes you have to sit down and say, what are we really spending here? We're spending $1 to make a quarter. And that's the problem. He's being so stubborn that they got into this point where they're now on the same trajectory as the cops, and even worse. The cops went 6 years without a contract. They're pretty close to it. But not only do they not have a contract, but you have a contract that's also upside down. And your membership is not being compensated properly. You have new members making more than senior sergeants. You have senior sergeants making less than cops. The whole thing's upside down. That completely kills morale as another aspect of what's going on. We talk about pay all the time not being an issue with the police department as far as retention goes. But this is a problem when it comes to the actual rank of sergeant, especially that rank that is running the entire police department. That's an epic fail. That completely destroys the job also. So what's the benefit to become a good leader and actually run the job properly if you're not even being compensated more than your subordinates and more than the sergeants that have less experience than you do? Because I say it all the time. Even with experience being in the Marine Corps, it takes about a year till you actually start to feel that transition from cop to sergeant. And I'll say this, and I used to say it, it takes a good solid 3 years till you're a full-fledged sergeant. So you create that distance between yourself and a cop, and you're a sergeant, and you don't need to actually wear those stripes for people to identify and see it's reflective that you're a supervisor, you're a sergeant. It takes about 3 years. And in that 3-year mark, these guys are not getting compensated properly. They should be protesting outside the SBA building, not the Apollo Theater. That's my thoughts on that.
So Mark DeMock says, you know, and he's being facetious here. He's not actually saying he's saying, don't worry about your raise, kid. Your retro is going to be fat, right? And what he's doing is emulating a union board member, right? So my opinion on this is that your retro check is probably anywhere from 10% to 15% of the money that you lost in those years waiting for that contract. So you're really getting really crushed. Then when you look at it as far as pension terms, that retro check, like, literally is peanuts. You literally got cents on the dollar back compared to the money you lost. When you look at how it's going to affect you long term and your pension, and again, like I said, just to do that with the compounded interest into your pension, the money into your pension, the extra money that's going in, your higher raise, it bumps up your overall pension numbers. I mean, honestly, when you look at it at the end of the day, 5 years without a contract is catastrophic to your pension. It's catastrophic. So this is the same thing that the PBA, the same failure that the PBA. To me, I mean, I don't have any proof of this. I personally believe it's intentional, and I believe it's your turn now, SBA, and that's what was negotiated. It's my personal opinion. I don't have anything to verify that, but again, there is no negotiation anymore. The person who went in first set the pattern, and that's it. If you don't want that pattern, you're giving something back of value. We're going to play around with that value, and that's it. You're not getting anything different. Even if there's something different negotiated and they sell you, oh, we got rid of the 6 months of zeros, but we just had to give away 4 days instead of 2, whatever that is, that's going to happen. And then they'll sell it to you and gaslight you a different way. And we'll tell you what it is. And then everyone will say we're two blowhards and we don't know what we're talking about. And then a few years later, it'll happen again and we'll be proven right again like we've been this entire time. Because what we're telling you is you're never going to break that pattern. That pattern was set. Deal with it. If you want to blame somebody, there's two people to blame. Blame the people who took the pattern originally, right? Blame the people who took the pattern originally, rush to the table. We go first. We set the pattern. We control it, right? You could blame them. But ultimately, once that's set, the reason you're without a contract is Vinny Valalon. 100%. Because Eric Adams, I'll say one thing about Eric Adams. I don't like the guy at all. I think he should be in handcuffs. I'm looking forward to seeing his subsequent indictment. I want to see what it is. And I still say there are numerous other crimes that if you gave me 2 weeks and access to some records, I would come up with about 100 others. But that's besides the point. That's besides the point. The point is, with Eric Adams, he settled nearly every contract in New York City. Nearly every civil servant agency contract he settled, besides the SBA. Whose fault is that? It's the fault of the SBA. It's not the fault of Eric Adams. Eric Adams is willing to negotiate. Yeah. This is how much money we have. How are you going to work it? What you're going to take? That depends on you, but the value isn't changing. And what the SBA is telling you guys is, we're trying to negotiate with the city for good faith. So the city's just going to give us some extra money. Yeah, okay, good luck. It's never happened. It has never happened. Will not happen. And I don't hold Eric Adams' feet to the fire. The dude's incompetent. He'll give away the entire store if he thinks it makes him look better. So he'll give away the store to give you guys a contract. It's already set. That's it. It's done. He's like, what do you want me to do? You're protesting me. What does it have to do with me? And he's got bigger problems to worry about. The dude's trying to keep himself out of jail, and he's got people working behind the scenes. He got his police commissioner working behind the scenes to get him a pardon. So it's like, what do you want him to do? He's busy.
Logic's Finest got a great follow-up here. And I think it's actually a great point. So Logic's Finest says, John and Eric, what do you think about changing the language rules around negotiating city contracts? Police can't strike, fair enough. It would be catastrophic. Seriously, if the New York City Police Department, just think about it, as the opposition that the NYPD receives, and I think the wacko lefties know it, if there's no police resources, in less than an hour, the entire city. John, wouldn't you agree? I think the entire city would just be shut down. It would be mayhem. It would be gridlock. You wouldn't go anywhere.
City's gonna collapse immediately because
immediately.
The crumbs gang will come right into effect, and they'll rob the city blind. So they'll rob the city blind. Anybody with nefarious intentions is gonna strike.
There's no doubt about
terrorism. You're gonna have bad actors. I'm with you. The city ultimately comes down, and then a vigilante group maybe of good people will come up, and good hardworking New Yorkers will come up to put the city back in order. But I think it'll be a very dark day in New York City history, and I hope we never see it. We've seen it. I think prior to us being born, the original blackout right? Like we saw what happened during that blackout. Police services went down, police radios went down, and you saw craziness. When we had the blackout the second time, we had a very large police force. City was a little different. Really wasn't anything going on. A couple of little stupid things, but I think it would be similar to the blackout prior to us being born. That's what we would see.
Logic's Finest says here, last line, but unions shouldn't be working out of a contract. I agree. You should not be working out of a contract when you're in a union. There's no doubt about it. And I'm completely against these retro checks. Try to say that 10 times. Especially with young sergeants and young police officers on the job. Not their fault. They don't really some are into finances, but some just don't really understand what's happening with their pensions. They don't really understand it. They haven't really delved into it. But these retro checks, I mean, you may think, wow, I got this substantial amount of money. But what happened to that money? What you're not realizing is that small basket that you have could have been spread out in different investments. That money could have been making you money in those past 5-6 years. You lost a substantial amount of money. And then the tax ramifications are huge because you're now into a higher tax bracket. You're paying a lot more. Most people, when they end up having a retro check, they end up paying at the end of the year. You end up having to pay back in your taxes because for that period, you didn't get taxed properly in that tax bracket. So usually at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, you're paying substantial money back. It's almost like taking a loan. If you take a loan that's taxed, it really hurts you. So these guys don't realize sometimes the substantial amount of loss of money. You're fighting inflation. So at the same time, you're fighting inflation. Your credit cards are building. Your debt is growing. And you have nothing to compensate that. And then you receive this lump sum of cash that you lost interest on. What are you going to do with it at that point? Are you going to invest at that point? Most people probably end up paying off their debt. And then the tax ramifications alone. So it's just a complete loss on all ends. But we're allowing this. And I get it. You're protesting outside the Apollo Theater. I really think you should be protesting outside the SBA building. And the other problem also is, from what I hear, it was a terrible turnout. So the unions know that. We can't band, I don't know why, forever. We can't band the cops together. We can't band the sergeants together. Everyone just says, it is what it is. They go on with their life. Everything's toppling. They complain. I think someone said it here earlier. I think it was Mikey G, Long Island detective, saying, listen to this. Sounds like what goes on in the locker room. And that's what happens. Everyone's complaining in the locker room, but no one's doing anything about it, hoping that things will just change. And they won't change. You have to put your feet on it. So you have to put your feet to the fire. So the fact that they had a low turnout, that's another problem also.
Yeah, so Rich Mez says, we have this issue because Vinny had a narrative of us having higher ground with 12-hour tours. He was wrong, and being held out of office of labor relations now wants something in return. I mean, it's multiple issues, but again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that they don't know that this pattern's never been broken and can't be broken, and they don't, like, these unions know exactly what it is. Once that pattern is set, it's done. So if you're not willing to take it, you're playing this long game, and you're drowning your members out. And I personally believe they're working directly for Eric Adams. I personally believe that they might have protested Eric Adams, but they were probably having dinner with him last week, telling him, Al Reyes with a One Tough Podcast to listen to host. What's that dude's name? Bo Dito. So this is what the SBA is saying, though. Let's get fair and let's say what the SBA is saying, though. Dear fellow sergeant, yesterday, the SBA negotiating team had our first mediation session with the state-appointed mediator. The goal of mediation is to have a neutral third party review the demands of both sides and attempt to move towards a resolution. Now, again, pattern set. It's not changing. You're not getting anything. City's not going to give you any more money. It's not happening. Never happened. Won't happen. Okay? The general wage increase had already been agreed to and will not be altered in any way by this process. There he tells you right there. That's it. It's over. He tells you right in the first two lines. The general wage increase have already been agreed to and will not be altered in any way by this process. So wasting more time, less money in your pension, less money in your pockets, less money in your retirement savings. Got it, right? Am I off on this at all? We have received inquiries related to the 12-hour tours being mandated by this process. The answer to that question is an unequivocal no. We'll see. The only issue discussed in the mediation are the two items that have resulted in the SBA being at an impasse with the city. The first item is the wage disparity that exists between sergeants promoted before and after August 1st, 2023. We spent most of the session detailing how the city broke pattern and created a situation where police officers earn more than some sergeants. True. It's absolutely true that happened. But it's also true that what he says debunks everything he's telling you right there. When he says the general wage increase has already been agreed to and will not be altered in any way. So in order for you to bring those numbers up, you have to give away stuff. Am I wrong with the first part of this at all? Do you see anything else here?
No doubt about it. This is what we've been saying. You're not breaking the pattern. No matter what, this money that they're spending right now and this show that they're putting on is just wasteless and useless. It's a waste of time. That's why, John, I agree with you that that's my point about them protesting at the Apollo Theater. To me, it looks like a big show and it looks like virtue signaling. From what I hear, most of the people that showed up are actually union members. That it wasn't actual sergeants that showed up. Because if it was sergeants that showed up, they'd be protesting outside the SBA building. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a handshake behind the closed doors, like, "Hey, Eric, we're gonna go put on a show and pretend we're protesting," And the ones and anybody that shows up is actually exactly the SBA. Turn that.
You got your pinky ring on, Eric? You know what? We got to get pinky rings. We need podcast. I'm making pinky rings. We're getting podcast pinky ring.
That's actually, listen, we need it.
I'm just gonna twirl it whenever I see anyone I don't like. I'm just gonna stand there. Yeah, Mo. No handshakes. Just twirl my pinky ring. That's it.
It is what it is.
Is what it is, kid. Yeah. What do you want me to do, Mo? It is. I talked to Eric, but I don't know. He says he's, what do you want me to do?
I mean, Patrick Donahue, what he says here. I think this is nice and generous of you to say that, but I agree in some ways. SBA has very good board officers in its ranks. With that being said, the ultimate responsibility for a union contract not being settled is failure to negotiate, and that falls on the president. Yeah, that's what we're saying. This falls on Billy Vallalong. Doesn't fall on the mayor. And that's one thing about Eric Adams. He's such a moron that they could negotiate him right now. He doesn't care. The city lost millions, but here you go, just another contract. What's another million?
So, but to be fair to the union, they're out of contract for 5 years. So whether they're good or not, they suck and they failed. You could tell me, oh, the guy's a great rebounder, but the team's 0-12. Sorry. All right, he's a great rebounder. Get him off the team. He's a great. So maybe it's not working in this system. This system isn't working. Whatever it is, it's the coach, it's the players. All in all, they're still gaslighting their members. It's still not telling their members what's going on. Like this is some type of secret. We can't talk about what's going on in there, Mo. Because you know why they can't talk about it? Because if you hear what's going on, you're going to lose your shit. That's why. Right? That's why they're not telling you. So I appreciate it. Yeah, they have a good board member. Okay, yes, there's some good guys in leadership in the NYPD, right? Doesn't stop any of the scandals from happening. And I don't think it personally falls all on Vinny Vallalong. I think that I think it falls as a collective of the union. And again, maybe Vinny does have a backdoor deal with Mayor Adams. So then why aren't the board members letting the union know that this guy's got to go? We have a vote of no confidence in him. So they're not doing it, and I don't see it. I don't see it. To me, when this is done intentionally. He tells you right here, we're not getting any more money, but I want more money. He tells you in the first line. He tells you in the first half of this thing, we're not getting any more money, but I want more money. Okay. So here we are. We're going to wait until all you guys are out. Mark my words, because this is what until after maybe this podcast. But but the plan, in my opinion, is we're just going to wait for all of you guys to be out, and then we're going to settle the contract. And none of you are getting back pay. So that's it. What do you got? 2 more years of sergeants that are going to go into that? That's what I'm seeing. I listen. I could be wrong. I don't know. I know I'm a conspiracy theorist. I know I should have just took the shot, stayed on the job. I know all these things, but that's what I'm seeing. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's me. So, the only issues discussed in mediation are the two items. Did I read this already? Yeah, I did. Okay. At no point would we agree to a contract that did not rectify this injustice. Most of the hours-long session was dedicated to attempting to convince the mediator of the merits of our proposal and polarizing and debilitating effects of the Office of Labor Relations, OLR, inflexibility on operations, morale, and retention of our members. To that end, we believe we made significant progress. Significant progress was made during this session, Eric. I'm sorry. Should the members have the ability to see what's happening in this meeting?
Transparency. Don't we say it all the time? Absolutely. Isn't that the whole point of having delegates? They should be providing all the information to their members. There should be transparency. Mikey G, Metal Detective Long Island, says the unions have been effective with contracts and ineffective with the vaccine mandate. I think ineffective is actually generous to say. I think. And there's a laundry list of things that they've completely intentionally done to not support their members. It's not that they're ineffective. They know exactly what they're doing. They didn't support the mandate because they're in bed with the enemy. These guys weren't getting the shot. These guys could care less about the contract. They're eating great. They're eating like fat rats. John and I say it all the time. Pull their appearances. You're going to see a lot different outcome. That's why we need to push. These unions should be they should be run and led by retired members. That's the bottom line. These guys don't care. They're in bed with the enemy. That's the problem. I mean, listen, from what I hear, just the information I'm getting, and I spoke to numerous sergeants, the turnout was terrible. And the turnout was, and I said, well, the turnout's not really terrible. It's just the turnout wasn't SBA. It wasn't actually the membership. It was just the union.
Because they're working 16 hours.
Right. You guys are working. You don't even have the ability to. It's the union that showed up. And what's funny about it, I'm sure they all probably put in an MEO 75. So if anybody from an outside agency knows, MEO is Mayor's Executive Order 75, because the union members, I was a delegate, I know, they actually get the day, they actually get permission to be at the union, and they're getting paid. It's almost like, taking a day off, and you're being compensated under Mayor's Executive Order 75. So, I don't think it's actual membership that showed up. I think the union showed up. I think it's a complete plan. Because if I was part of the membership, I would be protesting outside the SBA. I think, Vinny, what are you doing? And that's why the bottom line, the message is they're not breaking the contract anyway. So ultimately, nothing's getting done. You're just spending money and you're going without a contract. It's an epic fail, and it's a failure. It's going to take years for them to come back from.
No, absolutely. It's a complete utter failure, dude. It's terrible. It really is. It's the whole conversation is just, it makes me dumber, dude. Honestly, I'm losing brain cells having this conversation. So 800 people on here this morning. Thank you for joining us. We're talking about why sergeants are furious at the Sergeants Benevolent Association. This isn't a knock on the New York Post. We know the Post put an article out in support of the members saying that they were protesting Eric Adams, when in fact it was the union protesting Eric Adams. We're sitting here telling you that the members are protesting the union. And that's not a knock on you, New York Post. This is coming out from the members. We're going to get into some emails that we were sent. We're going to keep those anonymous. And just so you hear, right now, we're just walking through the SBA statement to unions, and the lack of transparency that's been given. So years and years, sergeants are waiting, and we know that you cannot break the pattern. They're basically telling you, they told the sergeants already, they can't break the pattern, and yet we're going to continue to wait it out. So, and the other thing, the other reason that the members weren't there is, again, I believe that they were working. They have these poor schmucks that are making less money than cops. Their overtime rate's cheaper. So keep those guys on overtime, because they're the schmucks that could keep working. They're the cheaper rate. Let's get them to overtime instead of the cops that are making more money, or the detectives that are making more money. So, I feel bad for you guys. I do. But I'm not going to sit here and butter yous up. You're never getting recompensated for that time. you're never getting recompensated for that money. It's never happening. So whether you went to 4 years, you're in the 4 years now where all the new sergeants continuously get bumped right to top pay and you're getting passed over, you're never getting that money. So the bottom line is this: settle that damn contract. That's what you should be telling Vinny Valalong. Take those zeros, take the 2 days for the new guys, and let's move along, because it is what it is. You did not set that pattern, and you are not breaking that pattern. So stop gaslighting us. So this is further into this email. The second impasse issue is how to permanently correct the salary steps for newly promoted sergeants going forward. This is not happening this bargaining round. It's going to have to happen. Go first the next time. Use Pat.
That was the key word right there, John. That was the key word. You said it. Going forward.
It's not going to happen this time. I'm sorry. It's just not. You know, the SBA's position is that the situation was created by OLAR's bargaining tactics and pattern breaking deals with other unions. Exactly, because Pat Lynch was smarter than all of you guys. He outsmarted you guys. He had Pat Hendry do it. Go in first, set the pattern. That's it. The pattern cannot be broken. So if the pattern can't be broken, set the pattern. And that's what's happening. So if you want to break that, you better set that pattern next time. The SBA is unwilling to pay for a temporary solution. OLR maintains that SBA must pay with givebacks, even if a solution is temporary. The city has set the giveback 6.5 months of zeros for all sergeants and 2 charge dates for the first 5 years promoted in the future. OLR solution would be useless after August 1st, 2025, when the PBA is due for another raise. Our position is quite simple. The SBA will only agree to a solution that ensures sergeants will make more than police officers they supervise on a permanent basis. Although the session ended with an agreement, we believe we have established a framework for future sessions going forward that ultimately lead to an agreement. Thank you for your continued support during these frustrating negotiations, and best wishes and happy holidays. Blah, 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 blah.
The ultimate goal is to get a contract without having any zeros, which is why you always want to stay. You always want to stay active with these contracts and not have an expired contract. It's not the reality when it comes to unions, especially negotiations with New York City, because everything is slow moving. You know, I'm okay if you're maybe a year or two without a contract. Sometimes things take time. It's New York City. It's fast moving, and things sometimes ultimately are slow. But when you're going 6 months, I'm sorry, not 6 months, 6 years without a contract, it's insane. It's insane. So I think at this point, pretty much what they have to do is stop the clock. And that should be the message to Vinny Valalong. Stop the clock, get us a contract. If it's 6 months of zeros, well, then it's 6 months of zeros. At least stop the clock and get yourself a contract and start to get that raise and get that interest into your pension. Because ultimately, this idea of that you never take zeros. This was the ideology for Pat Lynch. That was the word, never take zeros. And you know what? In this particular case, that's why you can't say never. In most things, you just can't say never. In this particular case, they may have to take some zeros to stop the clock, to get themselves onto a pension, to start getting the money where you're actually putting it in your pension. Because ultimately, if you wait 10 years, and it's not impossible that you can take 10 years. I mean, we went 6 years last time with the PBA contract. I definitely think we could end up going 10 years. It's not impossible, especially with what's going on with Mayor Eric Adams right now. If he doesn't have the ability to actually sit down with a contract because he's too busy worried about his indictment and potential superseding indictments, that could be a problem also. So yes, they have to sit down and stop that clock. So you might have to take 6 months of zeros, because ultimately, if you just get a retro check, you are getting zeros, because that money is cash, is trash sitting in your hand. What do you do with that money now? You can't put it into your pension. It's too late. If there was a great investment opportunity, you missed that window also. And you have yesterday's dollar today. It's worth less sitting in your hand. So I think ultimately, sometimes you have to take those zeros. It's not something that you want, but I think you have to stop the clock.
You're taking the zeros one way or the other. The pattern was set. So it is what it is. You're either taking the zeros or you're funding those zeros with givebacks. And Chris says it here, Chris on X. He says, this isn't a new phenomenon. It's happened at almost every contract when the PBA contract settles. Sergeants and detectives often have people caught in that situation. Exactly. And that is the fault of the unions not working together. That is where you see where they can't negotiate with each other, where they can't reach it across the table, either because they don't communicate properly, or they're pig-headed, or they're egotistical, or they just suck at negotiating. So that's true, but Einstein's definition of insanity comes into play. We're just going to continue to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result. So, I mean, to me, when I read that, what I hear is I already see the future. And I see the future is in August 25, when everyone's out of that, they'll be the first to go to the table to bargain, to collectively bargain a new pattern. And you're going to get a longer contract, but you're never breaking that pattern. You're going to get the contract that was originally given, and you're going to set the pattern. And then 4 years from then, same thing's going to happen again to new promoted sergeants, because that's what's happening. So he already told you basically in the email what's going to happen. So I don't expect anything different, other than if now they're going to scramble because we've put out the actual information. But I doubt it. Like I said, I think August 25, you'll just get a real long contract. And that's what I'm seeing. I think we should read some of those emails that we got, and then, because we've been talking about this for about an hour. A couple other things came out in the news, and just a point of note with the what's it called, with the unions too, as it relates to the mandate. You know, you were all denied religious or medical exemptions. There's a process to actually overturn that. It's called Article 78. Your unions were well aware of that. I learned about Article 78 through a friend in the fire department about 120 days after my statute of limitations expired. I believe that was done completely intentionally. One, I believe that the unions should have filed those Article 78s for us, or if they couldn't afford to do so because there were so many of us, at least give us a class on how to do it. And maybe even teach us how to file it on our own using their own attorneys. And not only did they intentionally not tell any of us about it, they didn't help us at all. So if you're expecting these people to help you and you think they don't work for the city, they work for the city. It's not their membership. I'm going to just keep telling you over and over again. I don't care. I don't care who likes what I'm saying and who doesn't. I don't care any little stupid threats from all you fat losers with pinky rings. I could care less. I could care less, because the truth sucks, and that's what it is. That's what it is. Eric, you have any of those emails?
I do. I just want to say, honestly, stop calling them unions. Stop calling them benevolent associations. They should just be called your dental and prescription plan. That's it. Honestly, other than your dental and prescription plan and your representation at CCRB, what else are you really getting? So that, honestly, that's what they are. Dental and prescription plan. Let me see. Let me grab these emails real quick. I'll read out the names of the sergeants. Just kidding.
Don't read. You read one, I'll read one.
Yeah. No,
I got one. I got one first. I'll go first. All right.
You do? All
right. So this is one email from an active NYPD sergeant. Many sergeants are very upset with the union. They are not acting in the interest of their members. And it's been 3 years. A few lieutenants, captains, and sergeants are talking about how we lost thousands of dollars that could have been in our deferred and our pensions, or both. Most don't agree with the union, but they seem not to care, and they're not taking advice or criticism. Please put this out there. Enough is enough.
One second.
I'll keep going. I got another one. Here's another active sergeant. Low turnout at the rally. SBA has egg on their face. Egg on the face, Mo. You know, he didn't say that. I said that. No one has faith in the leadership. If new sergeants have to give back their days back, the city wants to take 2 days from only new sergeants. It's worth it since the raise is very good. Vince is very inflexible and is not listening to his membership.
That's the end of it?
Yep.
This is from another sergeant here. You know, it's really sad that they even have to write this, because to me, when I read this, is they're asking for help. Where they're supposed to get the help is the actual union, and they're not helping them. That's why I said they should be called dental and prescription plan, and someone's, put that, don't forget their vision. But that's pretty much it. This sergeant says, SBA has failed its members. You got to do a podcast. SBA doesn't want to give an inch. We are losing out on thousands of dollars in our lost wages. The SBA is not listening and not doing what we want and what we need. That's the bottom line. You're a member. You're paying these dues. They're supposed to work for you. They're supposed to actually help you. They're supposed to be your voice. So the fact that they're reaching out to the podcast shows, they have completely been abandoned. They've been discarded. The union has turned a blind eye to their members, and yet they're in a position where they're still paying union dues. And I get it. I know a lot of times I say these unions need to go, stop paying these dues, and it's easy for me to say it because I'm in retirement now. But ultimately, if you actually look it up and you look up what a dental and prescription plan cost and vision, it's pretty much on par with what you're paying in dues. So if you have the money and you're willing to pay for your own representation, because God forbid you're in a jam or you're in a pickle, you will pay for your own representation anyway. So there is some argument. I know, John, you and I talked about this. They represent you at CCRB or just maybe for having a GO. Yes. But that's about it. And that representation is about 3 minutes long. So if you can afford it, your own representation, you might want to consider not being in the union anymore. If you get enough people to not be in these unions, because it's pretty much coercion at this point, and you're forced to be in these unions if you don't have that money to pay for those representation for those few and far between incidents. Unless you're me, I was getting GOs constantly, because of CCRB. But other than that, ultimately, if you're in a real jam, you're going to pay for your own attorney. But it's sad that they have to reach out and listen, we're here to help you. But the bottom line is the union is not serving their members. Dental and prescription plan. That's it.
So here's another sergeant. So I don't agree with the union. We spoke about this before. Unless there's something else in place, maybe the Finest Unfiltered union pops up. I don't agree with. I think at this point you need to take your union back. That's how I feel. I don't agree with walking away from it. I say fight for it. You get what you fight for in this life, and that's all it comes down to. So I say take that union back. There's nothing in place currently for these guys to fall back to. If there was something set up, then I would say that, but there just isn't at this point in time. So this is another member of the SBA. It's another sergeant, another active sergeant. SBA is failing its members. Every sergeant I spoke to wants a contract, and we lost thousands. No matter what the time frame, we get the promotion in. It's 100% right. And lost money, that is compounded interest in our pensions and deferred compensation and our retirement plans. SBA is not listening to his members and is not acting in the interest of its members. They have not been forthcoming in that negotiation with the city. Until recently, that has been going very badly and hit his face. It does look like the city wants to force 12-hour tours down our throats, which it doesn't work. We are too busy. And many cops in transit and busy patrol precincts are working 16 to 20 hours a day for weeks on end. And that is not mentally or physically healthy. Many are leaving for other departments, as they should. The SBA and the city may have to agree that newly promoted sergeants may have to give up a day or two, which is reasonable as the pay is worth it. The SBA needs to prove and show that 12-hour tours don't work, so this becomes a non-issue. 12-hour tours are nonstop in the place where he works, which is great, obviously, because I guess he's making money and he likes it, but he's probably never home. And you're probably in the last years of your career and you're walking out the door. I see you, and he says, please talk about this on the show. Thanks. Or she, I don't know. We'll keep them genderless.
And don't worry, we never give up our sources. Never. That's one thing we give you our word. Never. And we won't communicate it to anybody else either. Your identity is protected. Absolutely. But again, it just shows you the unions right now are not representing their members. They've hit a brick wall at this point. The membership has completely crashed at this point that they have to reach out. And we're glad you should reach out. And John, I'm not saying that we should just completely absolve union type ideology. They do need representation. But is it the actual union itself? I explored the idea. We talked about it. I think ultimately, if these unions are going to stay in place, if it's going to continue at this structure, it should be retired members that are actually in charge. I would like to see, if the union stays at this structure the way it is right now, retired members actually taking the role of president, treasurer, things of such. But having active members that just have too much in their pocket, it's very self-serving to be in bed with the enemy. It would be far different and different leverage. And I do think we'd have much more negotiating power if it was retired members that are actually in the position of leadership when it comes to the unions. But if we were to scratch the unions, yeah, I do believe that the Finest Unfiltered could have some type of representation. I think we could do a far better job than what the unions are doing right now, and we would fight like hell. And the beauty is we are in retirement, and we can fight like hell. And that's a problem. They're in bed with the enemy, and they have their own self-serving needs. That's why these guys stay there forever. Pull their appearances and pull the leverage that they have right now, and these guys will retire tomorrow.
Yeah. So everybody's talking about the Giuliani contract with heroes for zeros, 2 years of zeros in the contract. Chris, I was liking you, but now I don't anymore. Nah, I'm only kidding. So, but it did not start under Pat Lynch, but under Doc Savage. It's one of the reasons Lynch was voted in. We got 2 zeros in our contract under Savage, not Lynch. 100%. Lynch ran on that, right? Lynch got promoted off that contract, and that contract was better than any contract Pat Lynch ever got you. And that's the fact that nobody grasps. That 2 years of zeros, that contract, the Heroes for Zeros, that was, I believe, 16% when you rounded it all up, and there were no givebacks. There was I forget, there were 2 givebacks, but they weren't. I forget what it was. It was like one. I don't remember what it is, so I don't want to say it on here. But it was a better contract than Pat Lynch ever negotiated. Pat Lynch got elected off of that Mr. President when he was playing and pretending to be John F. Kennedy, from Boston, driving his Volkswagen Bug. The liberal Democrat, Pat Lynch, ran on that. It was a great platform to run on, and he never negotiated a better contract than that. So if you're going to knock Rudy Giuliani for those 2 zeros, you're going to knock Doc Savage for those 2 zeros. We got to look at the fact there hasn't been a better contract since that point. That was the best contract. There hasn't been a better contract since, ever. So, and that's it. That's just the fact of the matter. Everything else has been pattern bargain, negotiation, going to OLR, fighting for it, bleeding you guys out. Everybody's fighting for numbers. And what do we learn? We learn one thing. You can never break the pattern once it's set. It is what it is.
Well, John, I've said this before, but here's my argument. I think that every time you're out of a contract and you get a retro check, you did get a zero. I think every contract that you're not up to date in your contract is a zero. And the reason why I say that is because in this case, and I think John and I explored this about 2 years ago, and that was a fantastic contract actually in comparison to the years of Pat Lynch. If you have 2 years of zero and followed by 3 years and you get a substantial amount of interest, and that's all pensionable, and it's increasing your pension, and that money is actually in your hands, and you can invest it into your deferred comp, into your 401k, or you can put it, now we have crypto and other different types of stock right now. And John, you and I talk about stocks all the time and what's doing well. Your money is making you money, right? That's the difference between being poor and being rich, right? Poor people work for money. Rich people have money work for them. So if you're not up to date in your contract, you have no money to work to make you more money. And if you're getting that retro check, yes, you can say, okay, I got 3% of a year where I made $150,000, whatever that is. But that's now money in your hand. Cash is trash. But that money was never invested into your pension. That money was never invested into deferred comp. So ultimately, for those years, you did get a zero. So that's why I say every time you get a retro check or you got a zero, you got the same thing. And ultimately, what we did identify here is that this is about going forward. So if you think you're going to be compensated for these years and they're going to get you up into parity because of the pay disparity, it's not happening. What Vinnie Valalong said in that email is exactly what we're talking about here, is moving forward. This contract is an ultimate loss. So if you take a couple of zeros to get you up to date, I think it's a win.
Shit, my mic keeps going on. I don't know what the hell. This wire is finicky for whatever reason.
It must be Juju. He's here.
So yeah, I mean, listen, I think we nailed it home. I think that you're not breaking the pattern, but Pat Donahue has a great a great idea. He says maybe the SBA president should consider hosting a fundraiser for Mayor Adams. Rumor has it, if you do, he'll look favorably upon your requests for discretionary promotions and transfers.
I hear the going rate for a promotion is $3,500. Did you hear the same thing?
We got a $3,500 for a promotion. Yeah, I heard some.
That's right. Yeah,
I heard those envelopes were hefty. Those were hefty. I heard there was some envelopes for overtime too. You had to pay back some of that overtime.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Let's see what happens. I'm not hearing good things about today. Like I said, I think this month's been crazy so far. Like I said, the first show of the year, I think we're going to see some fireworks, and I think there's going to be a lot more stuff coming out. Anything you want to add on the contract before we get off this?
No, I think they nailed the home. That's the bottom line. Is I think they're short-sighted. They want to, they want to hold out for you to get this retro check. But ultimately, I think the reality is it's a zero. I think it's a zero. It's a complete loss. You're getting a contract that's almost 6 years old. It's completely upside down. You're not breaking the pattern. John, as we always say, the messages, you have to set the pattern. So shame on the union. I feel sorry for the membership. I'm glad they reached out to us, but that's what it's become at this point. In the union, instead of seeing John and myself as an alliance, because ultimately we're helping the members, we're a voice for the union, and especially if they don't want to be so combative with the upper echelon in the administration, they have an outstanding voice here that's supporting the rank and file. But they're working with the enemy, and they're working against the actual membership. This just doesn't make any sense. If you put pen to paper, you're getting a zero either way. Either way, it's hurting you more it's hurting you on the front end, and it's hurting you on the back end. You have to see that. It's very short-sighted. It's honestly it's a fool's errand that you have. It's almost like a leprechaun. You got this pot of gold, you get this retro check, and you think it's a lot of money. But if you really sit down, if you had a financial advisor and think about how much money you lost over a 5-6 year period, you would say, "Oh my God, I never want a retro check again." The ultimate goal should be up to date in the contract. If the SBA would have settled properly instead of waiting it out, because the LBA had settled, the PBA had settled, but the SBA wanted to hold out, and everyone thought at the time, "Oh, SBA is the best union." Look, they're holding out. They held out, and look what they did. Sometimes you have to pick and choose your battles, and there was no fight, and it was the wrong fight.
I agree. I say settle that damn contract, get these people paid. Let's go. We had a mayoral candidate on here yesterday. He said he's willing to work with the SBA, but I'm sure the SBA will just support the first indicted mayor in New York City history, the one that has allowed the NYPD to look like a criminal enterprise, the one that has promoted people for failing upwards, the one who keeps people in place who were in charge of the overtime. So I think that's what they'll do. And I think they'll support Kathy Hochul, who also didn't give you guys a carve out, and they're not even to say a word about it because they don't even want to enrage you guys any further. I thought it was important. You guys been reaching out for a little bit while over this. So, yesterday we got slammed. So I'm like, you know what, let's talk about it. I think it'll be a good thing. Eric agreed. We hope you guys get a contract. I don't see it, honestly. I see my prediction is they'll bleed out all the guys, and then they're going to settle that contract when they do, and it's just going to be a longer contract, and they're going to tell you what a victory it was and how they got no zeros and all this other bullshit, and it'll be all the stuff that they could have just took 4 years prior, and the city will have saved millions of dollars, and you'll be like, wait, why did we do that? And like I said, I think they work for the city. So something came out yesterday. We were supposed to get Liz Collins on the show. I'm terrible at reaching back to people, so it's my fault. Liz Collins is the doc. She wrote the book They Lied. She also made the documentary that's been seen millions and millions of times across the world, The Fall of Minneapolis, which highlights the arrest of George Floyd. We talk about it often on the show, how leadership's important. I think the segment, we should just talk about integrity. I've been continuously saying yesterday that integrity is a non-negotiable in law enforcement, and it should be. I have no sympathy for people that don't have integrity. Jim Walden actually called me after we did the show yesterday, and he said that he wanted me to just let everybody know that he was a little confused about what we were asking for. And he thought we were advocating for people who submitted fake cards and committed fraud to go against the mandate. And that's what he was talking about when he said, I'll look at each case. And even though he believed these people committed fraud, he said that he would look at the case and consider reinstating some of those people. I was like, well, Jim, I think you completely misunderstood what we were talking about. And that's what I was trying to allude to you in the show. So we're going to have further conversations about it. But I think that's a great starting point. If he was willing to look at the case and take it on a case-by-case basis, maybe there was a single mother that felt coerced and she was like, I'm not putting this in my body for whatever reason. I think that's a great starting point for people who were against these mandates, people who were harmed from these mandates. Now, I personally, as much as I feel bad, I think integrity is a non-negotiable in policing for several reasons, right? You're not allowed to testify in court. You're not allowed to do all these things, which Corey Pegues, actually, I think he did another clip where he was talking about John Schell. He's talking about the racism. He was talking about it's insane that John Schell can't testify in court, but he's in charge of the police department. I agree with all of that, by the way, but he left out another important character. His name's Kaz Daughtry. I wonder if that was because of the color of his skin, Corey. Do you think so? Or is that because the mayor's your boy and that's the mayor's boy? Like, why are we leaving out Kaz Daughtry's name, who's also on that list that cannot testify in front of court and who's also out on the scenes of crimes and could also harm an investigation and harm a criminal investigation and is showing up at all of these things? So I agree. I think integrity is a non-negotiable. I don't think either of those people belong in that position. For you, Eric, like, what do you guys say about integrity? Because like, this is what came out yesterday on this show, and Liz Collins was talking about with Jack Posobiec. I was blown away. And we had reported on this about a year earlier about that cops in Minneapolis perjured themselves to put one of their own members in jail, which made absolutely no sense.
Integrity and moral principle goes hand to hand. There's no doubt about it. I used to make that was like the bedrock for leadership. I used to say you have to stand on your integrity. No doubt about it. Even sometimes when you have to go to your bosses with things, if there's mistakes or errors made and you know that you're going to get smacked for it, you got to tell the truth. There's only one way to get out of it, by telling the truth, because once you start telling a lie, that lie gets compounded. You need to tell other lies to hide that lie. You have to tell the truth. There's no doubt about it. And it shows moral character. If you have integrity, you actually face adversity, and you actually face adversity head on. But when you lie, everything else has to be sneaky. There's no doubt about it. Integrity cannot be compromised, especially in law enforcement. We need people of strong character that tell the truth in the face of adversity, that don't lie. And this is a major problem here. This is a major problem. You know what? Listen, I'm the most complaint cop. I own it. But one thing I didn't do is lie. And I can tell you right now, my complaints are completely frivolous. I was a political target. It was a hit job. I'm as white as they come, working the South Bronx. I was the quintessential lieutenant to come after, spearheaded by Cop Watch. But out there getting illegal firearms, and all my complaints come from the most violent perpetrators, if you actually look into the context of it. But I wasn't there lying. When I testified, there was numerous cases where I had to use force, getting illegal firearms. And if they asked if I used force, absolutely. I used to always tell my men, you know what? Just tell the truth. Tell them what you did. If you had to deploy a strike to someone's face, then you tell them, yes, I deployed a strike. I hit my adversary to the face. Tell them, justify it. Don't pretend. And sometimes, when you lie, you lose your confidence, and you lose your confidence, and you start to have to compound these lies. So there's no room for defeating your own integrity. Now, I get it. I understand. I think the mandate was completely illegal. I think it violated everyone's law. There was a great conversation yesterday with Jim Walden. And I realized that when we have the conversation that this is not his wheelhouse. I only talk about the mandate. And I don't expect it to be his wheelhouse. What I do expect is that he's open to conversation, which he was. And the fact that he called you back and you and I had spoke about it and how he was concerned about the conversation we had, and he realized that this is not his wheelhouse, but he's willing to actually have consultations and get himself educated on the subject, which to me is it says a lot about a person. That's what you want. I don't expect, because he's the mayor, that he has to know every single thing. No, but what I expect is that he's willing to have conversations to get himself educated, as knowledgeable as possible. I know it may have seemed, for some people that watched yesterday, it seemed he was holding in about a potential fraud. I think, well, because he was under the impression that those that were terminated because of fraud. So we'll definitely have him on here for follow-up conversations. You know, I think that he's definitely open to that. To me, he showed that he was humble but confident at the same time. So there's no room for lack of integrity, especially in leadership, especially because who supports the rank and file? If not the unions, they're supported by the leadership. And if your leadership is going to lie, what will they do to you?
No, I agree. And, you know, I think for Jim, I think that he truly does care about people. And I think he's got a big heart, because he sounded pretty flustered. He's like, I wasn't aware. I didn't know. And so when I started walking him through all the scenarios, you know, I think, you know, and I spoke about this with one of my friends. I think it's kind of hard to believe that people like myself were forced out of our careers for no reason, that people like Marlon Bethel were terminated for no reason. I think it's hard to believe. And I think Eric Adams and the media did a great job of keeping that away from people who really aren't up on the issue, you know? So I think, you know, the fact that he wants to understand it and he's willing, I already like him. Honestly, I think he's going to be a major player in the New York City mayor race. I think he already is. He may not have the recognition of Andrew Cuomo or Eric Adams yet, but I think that's going to change in the next month or two. And I'm willing to put money on that. If anybody wants to ask, I think when his fundraising numbers come out, you're going to see. I think all these are going to spin. I think Jim's a major player, and I think he's someone that actually cares. And from just our conversation alone, I could tell one thing about Jim. Jim wants to be the mayor in New York City. He wants to run for New York City. He wants to do the right thing. He cares about people. I know I've spoken to the man for a few hours now, and I think that he actually cares. Do I agree with him on everything? Probably not, because I don't agree with anybody on anything. I even probably disagree with myself 90% of the day. So it's you know, I thought that was great. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, you know, when we talk about sincerity, when we talk about integrity, I mean, I think, again, I'm going to say it, the mandates were the ultimate litmus test. It showed it showed who you were at that time. You saw who the Warriors were. You saw who was going to stand up. You know, I say it often. Everybody thinks that they're going to be David. They're going to be that little boy that when all his soldiers, the people that are supposed to protect him, are afraid, they think they're going to be that little boy to go stand up and go out and fight a giant. But what people come to quickly realize is it's not too easy to fight a giant when they're standing looking across from you and everybody behind you scared, and everybody around you and the people that you were that you relied on or you thought protected you were afraid. That's why that Bible story has really struck home for me so many times. And I think the mandate itself actually brought that to life for me, and actually brought me a lot closer to God, and it made me a much more faithful person. That time, the mandate particularly, and because it really brought the Bible full circle for me. I was like, wow, I'm being told that if I want to go with my career that I did absolutely nothing wrong in, I have to submit to something, which is basically talent that I don't believe in, that I don't believe is true, that I already know that I have the antibodies for, that they're asking me to get more of. And nobody could explain this to me, and nobody's trying to explain this to me. And I'm being bullied and I'm being treated as a peasant. And by the way, because I'm a supervisor, they're asking me to do it to other people. And I'm like, I'm not, I was like, I can't believe this. This is like real full circle. So, and I think a lot of people at that time shut down. I think they're like, I want out of this. I want out of this. I want this to go away. I'm just going to do whatever you tell me and let it go away. So I don't think a lot of people actually stood and faced that giant, but I think some people did. And those people were the ones that were ultimately harmed. And so now when I did a testimony, I did a video not too long ago about a cop who's testifying and he's lying. He's not being forthcoming with what his orders were, who told him to deny these accommodations. He signed off as the investigator for reasonable accommodations, but he won't tell anybody who actually made the decision. He's saying, "Oh, I actually wasn't the investigator. I just signed off on everything." Right? And I'm sitting here and I'm saying, why am I lying? If I'm a cop, why am I lying to protect the city of New York? This is what I was told. This is what my supervisor. I expect you as a police officer to have integrity. If you have no integrity when it comes to telling the truth of what happened, you cannot be trusted. You should not have a shield. You should not have a gun. And what we saw happen during the Chauvin trial was we saw that there are people in police leadership and there are people in the police department, and the same thing with the NYPD when it comes time to the mandate, that really are cowards and have zero integrity and should not have a badge and a gun because they cannot be trusted. Now, regardless how you felt about George Floyd and Derek Chauvin, regardless how you felt about it, I knew it, that was part of his training. I said that from day one, and people labeled me a racist. They labeled me everything under the sun because I said that move is part of their training. Law enforcement as a whole across this country denied that. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And then we had cops during that trial. Now, you could have thought that Derek Chauvin didn't do the right thing. But why in God's name would you get up on the stand, swear an oath that you will tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God, and then lie that was part of his training? That wasn't part of the training. I've never seen that move prior. I've never seen that move before. And I'm sitting here going, what? I know that isn't part of the training. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I put that out online over a year ago. Liz Cowell, I put it out originally. I put it out online over a year ago when the documentary dropped. Liz Collins is being sued now for defamation of character from a cop that perjured herself. Clear as day. And we're going to show you the irrefutable proof of that. What do you think about that, Eric? Regardless, I don't even want to get into the details of George Floyd. It's a long, drawn-out thing. It'll take us 4 hours to go through that. What do you think about that? It was part of his training, and people went up on the stand and said they never saw that move ever in their life.
I mean, you're absolutely right. It would take hours. It would take days. It would take weeks to actually go over it. But when you actually look at the case, because I watched the entire trial, and I'm sure many people, our friends at list, watched the trial. But I said to myself at the time, and I say it now, it appeared to be a collaborated effort between between the upper echelon and numerous supervisors at the lower level, along with the politicians. It appeared to be a collaborated effort to continue this lie, to bury and put all the blame on Derek Chauvin, whether he's right or wrong, to put any blame or potential blame on him to stop these riots, to stop any mass chaos. So to me, it appeared to be a collaborated effort to throw him under the bus. And they completely sacrificed their integrity and they gave it up, because there's no doubt about it. That MRT, that maximum restraint training, they had manuals. There was numerous information, credible information, that there was proof that there was a manual, a handbook that they were trained by. And yet they all testified against it. So to me, there's no doubt about it. It's nefarious because this was a collaborated effort. And to me, to get a collaborated effort, you need the leadership involved. So to me, it's just an all-out corruption. And it's sad because watching that, I said to myself at the time, could you expect that from the NYPD? Absolutely. I know. Patrick Donahue is hilarious. Patrick Donahue, I love you, brother. 242 people watching, only 64 likes. If we don't get more likes, John is going to go off on a tangent about the mismanagement and building maintenance, and Eric will rant about intrusive policing. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. But you know what I'm saying? The bottom line, there was a collaborated effort. And to get that collaborated effort to lie on the witness stand, it had to be pushed by the leadership. And definitely, in my opinion, based on my observations, definitely conversations with the politicians. It's sad. And you know what? I don't think the unions here and the NYPD are any different. And we see it because the mandate showed that these cops were casualties and they were just completely discarded. Sal Greco, wrongfully terminated, discarded. Marlon Bethel, wrongfully terminated, discarded. People lie all the time. They lie about criminal association. We cannot have sacrificed integrity. If John shaves, the lights will go through the roof.
Why is everybody trying to get me to shave? My wife's trying to get me to shave. My business. I got men telling me I'm more attractive with a beard.
What gender are you?
Yeah.
Well, if you shave, we might not be able to tell your gender anymore.
Yeah. So, listen, we got about 1,000 people on here. Thank you for joining us this morning. We just talked about the SBA contract. You could go back and watch that segment on YouTube or X or Rumble. We're even up on LinkedIn and Twitch. So you could go back, rewind, watch that section. What we're talking about now were the revelations that came out during the trial of George Floyd, where there were cops that testified that the move that Derek Chauvin deployed was not part of their training, when in fact it was. There were numerous documents online. I had spoken with several people that actually were from the area, so they had told me it was part of the training, showed me proof of it early on. And I said originally, I don't know that just because it was part of his training that it alleviates him of criminality. But the fact that a police department and a mayor and a city are sitting there and lying and saying that it's not part of the training tells me everything I need to know that this is a corrupted city and a corrupted police department. And I think it was disgusting. So now Liz Collins, we should get her on here. I'm going to reach out to Liz today. We should get her on here. And Liz Collins put out a documentary. Liz Collins, longtime news reporter, married to a cop, demonized during the Floyd riots, after the onset of the Floyd riots. She started her own news company, Alpha News. She wrote a book, They Lied. She put the documentary out, The Fall of Minneapolis. She sent it out for free. And she showed the training documents. And because she showed the training documents and how they conflict with the testimony of a person who was an inspector at the time, but has twice been promoted since, is suing Liz Collins, saying that she defamed her and it harmed her career. She was promoted twice since lying on camera. So this is a clip from Jack Posebek. I want to play it because I can't stare at Jack's face any longer. Sorry, Jack. Definitely this guy should never be bald. But Jack's a nice guy too. I met him a few times. Great guy. He had human events with Jack Posebek. So he has Liz on. They're going to break down a little bit of this. I'll stop it here and there to discuss it, but they're going to tell you exactly what happens. He has Liz come on. Again, integrity is a non-negotiable, and what you're going to see here is anything but that. You're going to see people that should have no business wearing a badge and a gun.
Something that he mentions at the very end there, where he says, these are the guys who should be getting Pulitzers. And the person that
Well, that's nice of you to say. Be careful what you wish for, though. I don't know. You've never met me just yet. So, but yeah, I'm happy to be on today to talk about, more developments really from the land of crazy, it seems, here in Minnesota.
So so we were, and there's two things I want to talk about, but first, right off the bat, tell me about this new document that's come out, this letter essentially that's been signed regarding a potential example of perjury, lying under oath during the trial of Derek Chauvin.
Yeah, so this all comes about, Jack. We were sued for the fall of Minneapolis and my book, They're Lying, the Media, the Left, and the Death of George Floyd, a defamation lawsuit we were served with back in October. And we filed this motion to dismiss. As part of this motion, we have had 34 former and current Minneapolis police officers come forward to say this knee on the neck restraint was trained by MPD during the time Derek Chauvin worked as a Minneapolis police officer, and also during the time of his trial in 2021. Even more shocking, 14 of these officers go so far as to accuse the now assistant police chief, Katie Blackwell, who is the one who is suing myself and Alpha News, accuse her of committing perjury during Derek Chauvin's trial. So they go so far in their declarations, again, sworn court testimony, to say that she lied. And she has been promoted a couple of times since her testimony in Minneapolis, in Hennepin County, during Chauvin's trial. And amazingly, she's accusing us of defamation after the documentary, saying that it's, kind of haunted her. People have confronted her since, but we have 49 sworn court declarations in all that were submitted to the court just on Monday. And so this is some fallout as a result of that.
Okay, so let's break this up into a couple of buckets here. So first off, look, I remember within, I don't know, hours, maybe even minutes of first seeing the video of Derek Chauvin and George Floyd all the way back when it happened at the end of May in 2020. One of the very first things I did was go over to the website, just drive right over there of the Minneapolis Police Department and pull up the training. And this was something that I remembered from just being in the military and having been in the Navy and understanding how these types of trainings and authorizations work. Is one of the first things you do is you're going to look up, okay, how was the officer trained? How was that restraint supposed to be applied? And was that done according to training? And basically everything that I looked up, and I guess my question would be to ask regarding these sworn statements was, did they back up that essentially what was done in that video was exactly or as close to as possible in the field, the training that they were given in the police department?
Yeah, so just to let people know, Katie Blackwell essentially says on the stand that she does not recognize what Derek Chauvin is doing with this knee on neck restraint. She's saying that they're trained to use arms in this type of situation. And we used about 30 seconds in total in the fall of Minneapolis, really drilling down and focusing on the specific MRT training. So they're saying she lied. Not only that, Jack, we've included in this brief picture after picture of this, in fact, technique being used during Minneapolis police training. We also have a photo of Katie Blackwell herself that appeared in a Minneapolis police yearbook dating back to 2014, where she was restraining a suspect during some rioting that took place after a hockey game on the campus of the University of Minnesota. And she is, in fact, putting her knee on a suspect's, what appears to be the upper back or neck area, an actual picture. And so
So you hear that, right, Eric?
It's so reflective of what's going on with the NYPD right now, especially when it comes to criminal association, right? Sal Greco was wrongfully terminated for criminal association, and yet we have the upper echelon of the police department, along with high prolific politicians hanging out at Consafritos with nefarious characters. We have the upper echelon actually on camera, including Kaz Daughtry, right? Involved in an incident that has the optics to it that possibly may need to be investigated. And the reason why we say that is because other cops, rank and file, have been modified or suspended for using the same type tactics. We're not saying that we're against Kaz Daughtry's particular tactics in that video, but what we are is highlighting hypocrisy. So we see it here in the leadership also saying, hey, I don't approve of that. That's not something that we have, but yet they're doing it themselves. VSS Ventura, shout out to you, brother. Coffee and donuts. Here we go. $20. George Floyd was a railroad job to pacify the violent race-baiting losers of society. If everyone's racist, then no one is. Judge others by actions, merit, and integrity, not melanin, which none of us have control over. Absolutely. It shouldn't be any discrimination. There's no such thing as reverse discrimination. It's just all discrimination. And the bottom line is this is an outright lie. She has refutable evidence that this was a collaborative lie by the leadership of the Minneapolis Police Department, along with, which I believe, the district attorney's office there, and of course the politicians to actually pull off this lie. Because, listen, the bottom line is, if it's not documented, or it is documented, it has to be proven, and it has to be evidence-based in court. I remember something that was quite similar to this, John. In 2006, I believe it was the Sean Bell case, think it was 2006, maybe 2005. I think 2006. But in any case, I remember at the time that Ray Kelly did say, and I support Ray Kelly in most aspects, but I was actually perturbed by this. I was pretty young on the job, but I remember I looked for the actual training for what he said. And he said on TV, he said that the officers are trained to shoot 3 times, stop, and assess. Now, yes, that is a drill that you do at the gun range. Sometimes you shoot 1 time, stop and assess. Sometimes you shoot 2 times, stop and assess. Sometimes 3 times. Sometimes you just unload your gun. And I said, okay, I understand the argument. That's a drill. But where is that actually documented? I couldn't find any training where it says that. So I thought, again, that was pacifying the public. Was it a lie? It was an omission. And that's a problem. And to me, an omission is a lie. So I had a huge problem with that back then. And this is another lie. And that's what we see. Leadership, when it's a failure, they throw their rank and file under the bus and they throw them to the wolves. And that's sad. That's why I say to the cops right now, if these vehicle pursuits ever become prolific and Letitia James actually puts a finger on it, these guys will be held liable and accountable, and no one will support them. The upper echelon will say, hey, that's not how they're trained. There's a patrol guide procedure for it. Believe me, they'll throw it right at you.
Yeah, so Kaz Daughtry did a similar move to someone. And by the way, we're not allowed to do that in the NYPD. And like Eric said, you would get suspended, modified, more than likely arrested by Alvin Bragg's office if you did it in Manhattan like he did. And I said, and they're like, oh, they're good guys. Kaz is a good guy. Shell's a good guy, even though people are threatening our kids and all this other bullshit. But yeah, they're good guys. They're great guys, even though they're smearing me and Eric's name for absolutely no reason, because we did an episode that said that, where we said we explored the appointment of Kaz Daughtry, but whatever. But I said, all right, if they're good guys and they're honest guys, why don't they give their analysis of what they think about the George Floyd incident? And they're not. They're going to lie. They're going to say it was horrible. I specifically remember an SBA board member doing a video about being black and blue right after this thing came out. I remember black officers going crazy about how this was racism and this showed racism in policing. And I'm like, do we live in Minnesota? Like, what about the Floyd incident had we deemed Derek Chauvin a racist? What evidence was there to suggest that Derek Chauvin was a racist? Yet it was a fact from day one. And you had people, sworn officers in uniform, selling this dude down the river, trying to distance themselves from the fact, that's not us. We're not like that. Blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, listen, I'm not saying that I would have done what Derek Chauvin did, but it's part of his training and it's something that should be explored. I'm not going to deny the fact that it's part of his training. Now, just because if it's part of his training, does it mean that, well, it's part of my training, I could kill you because they trained me to do that? No. Obviously, you could explore the criminality. And like I remember that Ray Kelly thing. You just brought back like memories for that. That was a full-blown misrepresentation of our training. Full-blown lie. It was a full-blown lie, in my opinion. We're trained at the range. That is how we shoot. That is not how we are trained. 3 and assess. We are not trained to do that in a tactical situation. Obviously, everyone knows when you're in a high adrenaline, tense situation, your frontal lobe's going to shut down. Your adrenaline's going to start flowing. You're going to rely only on your training. And more than likely, you're going to think you only shot once or twice, and you're going to have shot your entire clip out because you're going to just not know what's going on. Most people cannot react well in those situations. And it's not even just in a shooting. It's in fights consistently. It's in physical confrontations also. The only way to do that is to break that, is to train often. Only way to break that. So I'm sitting here and I'm saying, as a profession, nationally, we failed the entire profession, the George Floyd incident. As a profession, the fact that we can't sit here and talk about that this was a trained thing that the Minneapolis. Now, could we say it was wrong? Could we say he applied it too long, that he applied it wrong? But this woman testified that she never saw that training when Liz Collins just told you, and I'm going to show it to you later. She just told you, I have a photo of her deploying it. She never saw it, though. I'm going to show you a photo of them training their recruits using the same exact tactic. She completely lied. She was promoted twice since. In my opinion, she needs to go to jail. She needs to be arrested and brought up on perjury and go to jail. And so does the training. Whoever else, there were other people that testified. It wasn't just this woman, so I'm not just singling her out. They need to go to jail. You lied for what reason? Why? Where is the integrity in that? Where is the integrity in covering up for a mandate that you didn't put in place? Where is the integrity for covering up for a higher up that told you to do something, to fire a cop, one of your own brothers? Where is the integrity in that?
Oh, that's exactly what I'm saying here. So when we reflect it and show how it mirrors the NYPD QC beast, that's exactly what we're saying here. That 3 and assess rule was just a knee-jerk reaction to the Sean Bell to throw cops under the bus. So, yes, we're very critical of this particular administration because it's far more egregious we've ever seen, and its failure is completely has the potential for a mass amount of corruption. But Ray Kelly, yes, under his leadership, for the most part, I thought he was pretty effective, but there were failures. And at that time, he, in my opinion, he threw those cops involved and cops and detectives involved in the Sean Bell shooting, he threw them under the bus by saying that they're trained to fire 3 shots and assess. And I said at the time, I was young on the job, and I really did. I looked for the literature on it because that's what I do. If someone says something, they make a statement, I look for the literature. I want the evidence on it. I'm a history major, so I believe in find the evidence. I want to read about it. And I couldn't find any literature that says we shoot 3 times and assess. I said, yeah, arguably it's a drill. It's a drill, but it's one of many drills when you could be involved in it in a situation where 3 shots would be necessary to get yourself cover and concealment to stop and assess. But that is not a blanket operation that we always fire 3 shots, stop and assess. To me, that was an all-out lie. And if it was now, those cops, based on that statement, in my opinion, would be in jail. So the leadership, it's very important what they say. And they should be accountable. And in my opinion, she was promoted twice because of her lie. I believe it was a collaborated effort, and I believe because she took the stand and lied, I believe that's why she was promoted. There's no doubt in my mind. VSS Ventura, shout out to you, Coffee and Donuts. Here we go, $10. History has many examples of people abusing others, but many times their own. People who push this narrative just want a special tier of treatment, and in a way, it's revenge for past mistakes of others. Well, I don't know if it's revenge, but there's definitely tiers of special treatment. There's no doubt about it. Especially we talk about the NYPD, but clearly based on this, that they had a collaborated effort to lie. Yes. And I think, John, you brought up a fantastic point. Just because you're trained to do something doesn't necessarily mean you should do it. But when you are trained to do something, it does go in your neural pathways. So that's where the leadership is also held responsible. If, John, and you and I go out and use a tactic that's not appropriate, but that's how we're trained, well, that's a failure in the leadership, because usually, and you should, if you're trained in something, you're going to do it over and over. So if you have 20 years experience in the police department and you get involved in a shooting and that shooting is improper, well, then that's on the leadership, because that's how you're trained and that's something in your neural pathways. So, but I agree on your aspect of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I mean, because we can make the argument. I'm sure there's plenty of times that you or myself were involved in situations that we probably could have shot and fired and hit our adversary, and we would have been justified, but we didn't. So, but the bottom line is they did fail, and they failed because they lied.
They lied. Like, what are you lying about the training for? Whether you agreed with the situation or not, whether you thought Chauvin was right or wrong, why are you lying? Why are you lying? It doesn't make it, and another thing, there was that stupid ass training, and it was like right before the mandates got in place. It was called what was it, where they were trying to teach you moral integrity? Do you remember that? They were teaching you moral integrity, which, by the way,
able training
of you don't have. Yeah. Able training. Yeah. They were teaching moral integrity. So it was moral integrity that now that these officers are speaking up, right? And I commend the active guys, because we know these guys are done, right? Their careers are over in the Minnesota Police Department, in the Minneapolis Police Department, excuse me. Their careers are over. Like, we know that. Speaking up literally means your career is over. We've been saying, and I said it yesterday, I said in blue cities across America, integrity is a non-negotiable in policing, but in blue cities across America, if you're cowardly and complicit and you are willing to lie on the behalf of a politician, that is your pathway to success currently in law enforcement. And we've seen it. Look at the last two chief of departments in the NYPD. Jeffrey Madry and John Schell, those are going to be stains on the wall of history in the NYPD, and they already are. They already are. They're already stains. It's disgusting. When you walk past that wall, they should have those pictures should be removed. There should be little asterisks next to their name. Eric Adams, pointed under Eric Adams, the first indicted mayor in New York City history, because there is a black mark on this NYPD. A huge one, a disgusting one of no integrity and lies and complicity. But during that training, I'm sitting there and I'm being forced out of my career, and I'm listening to people try to teach about moral integrity and how important it is for you to have integrity in the NYPD. And they show a video in Seattle. And in the video in Seattle, you see takedown after takedown. This is in the middle of a riot, an Antifa riot. The cops are wearing those turtle suits, the Ninja Turtle suits, all black, wear the hammer, because they're in full-blown riots with these LARPer Antifa kids running around with sticks and all this other stuff, spraying mace back at cops, throwing fire bombs at cops. So you see move after move in the video. You see cops taking perpetrators to the ground and deploying the MRT, which is the same exact move that Chauvin deployed. And then they freeze frame on one in particular scenario. They freeze frame to one scenario where the cop takes the person down, deploys the MRT, and he has his knee on the suspect's shoulder. And the partner moves the knee off the suspect's shoulder. And they said, did that partner do the right thing or the wrong thing? And I immediately raised my hand and I said, are we going to not talk about the fact that that's a trained move and that all of the other incidents prior to that, if you go prior, you pan back, all of the other incidents in that, they're all deploying that same entire move. I'm like, so if he believes that the partner's tunnel vision and is ultimately going to put the person out of the picture, then he did the right thing. If he's doing it because he's worried about how it looks, then he didn't do the right thing, because that's part of their training. So he actually broke his training. So it depends what we're talking about. I said, but I think if you're going to be teaching us the class, we have to bring this all into perspective, that every other single person is deploying that move. And there were 5 other people being arrested. And they sat there like, and I'm like, it's like, what are we doing here? What are you teaching me when you're not even highlighting what the fuck is going on here? What is this?
Well, Juju loves to troll, but I think you're missing the message here. Juju puts 9 minutes, 29 seconds. Have some shame. That's not the point. The point, we're not pointing out whether it was ineffective or not. Was it too long? Was there any culpability on Derek Chauvin? We're not pointing that out. What we're saying is that the leadership and his own organization lied to put the blame on him. That's a problem. And that's why I always say leadership has to take accountability. Just as with the NYPD, when Sergeant Hugh Barry was involved in a shooting with an elderly woman, there was a lot of critique on that. And I think it was Jimmy O'Neill, right? Master of kneeling down, said that was completely improper. Said that shouldn't happen. But that is the training. That's what they failed to mention, that the NYPD is trained to shoot an adversary with a bat. And miraculously, John, if you remember, after that shooting, when you went to the range, good luck finding the target anymore where the adversary is holding a bat. Now, am I saying that every person holding a bat you should shoot? No, but it does go in your neural pathways training. So that's where the leadership failed to say, hey, this is how we train our members. Maybe we'll explore other options. If you don't like the optics, this is not a good turnout. We should explore other training as well. But they didn't. They just put a complete entire blame on Hugh Barry. And, I spoke to so many people. Oh, it's absolutely ridiculous. I said, listen, we can argue whether him being a man and her being an elderly woman, the space, if he had the ability to overcome that and actually remove the bat, those arguments could be made. But the bottom line is that is how you're trained. And to me, that's a failure on the leadership of the NYPD, because after that incident, you couldn't find any targets with someone holding a bat. And that's exactly how you're trained in the police academy. Your inception to the academy is your adversary with a bat. When you take that stupid test, which I hate it, I think they should change that, is good shoot or bad shoot. And, I kind of agree with Corey Pegues when he talks about that, right? What's a bad shoot or good shoot? I mean, we shouldn't use this terminology. It should be pretty much just justified or not justified. So I think that's one of the questions. If someone has a bat, is it a good shoot if you fire? So you're building this training into the neural pathways, but then when he's involved in an incident, the leadership does not take any accountability. Popeye, damn it, shout out to you, brother. $10 to the podcast, coffee and donuts. I was disgusted by all the cops I knew stating on social media that they didn't support Chauvin's actions prior to the investigation. For your information, Bell's shooting was in 2006, 2 weeks prior to Shell's. Interesting.
I don't think that's accurate. I think that's something that Corey Pegues keeps saying, but I think Shell's shooting was in 2008. I could be wrong. I think that Corey had said that, but I don't think it's correct. And I'm not saying that it's anything, because my memory doesn't serve me well sometimes, and I mix things up too. It's obviously that's what happens. But these are clear lies, and to me, we're not talking about the incident itself. We're talking about the after effects of it. Why are you lying? Why'd you lie at Hugh Barry's trial as well? So, and I believe that there were lies told at Hugh Barry's trial too, there was no training that you shoot someone that charges you with a bat, when in fact that is actually the training. And you're 100% right. All of those things were removed immediately after that. Now, if you want to say we changed the training, that's fine. You know what? We saw a flaw in that, so we removed it. But don't deny that was training. Now you're a liar. Now you also deserve to be in jail. I don't care that you have an easy gig at the range. Doesn't mean it. Doesn't. Oh, well, I'll take my weekends, bro. I'll go back to patrol. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you're not going to get your SDS or your whatever? Okay. So you're going to perjure yourself and lie and potentially put this cop in jail based solely upon your testimony, because you're saying this wasn't part of the training, which in fact it was. Absolutely disgusting. Let's go a little further in this interview.
Officer who put together that yearbook is actually part of these declarations to say, here she is doing this exact same thing.
And I believe we have a clip, guys, that we can play that of you asking Chief Blackwell about this.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, how are you?
Fine. Yeah, actually, I have a few questions for you. Are you aware that 14 former and current Minneapolis police officers say you lied during Derek Chauvin's trial and perjured yourself? What's the truth here? I'd like to talk to you about the lawsuit you filed against myself and Alpha News. 34 police officers have come forward to say that MRT was trained by the Minneapolis Police Department. I've been trying to get in touch with you. You obviously declined my interview request. Don't you think people deserve the truth?
So, Liz, have you had any response from either Katie or the department, other than, of course, the lawsuit in terms of this?
Yeah, so the police chief issued a statement after all of this to basically praise Katie Blackwell, his assistant police chief, for her moral courage and integrity. I would still like to know if the chief of police actually watched the fall of Minneapolis or is really fully aware of her testimony. That is a question we have yet to have answered. We also have tried to get some questions answered from the mayor of Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry. He refused to see me this week, as I've been trying to actually ask him questions for years. He came out just about 36 hours after the death of George Floyd, and he was the first to say this is not a trained technique by the Minneapolis Police Department. And so again, it seems to be kind of a new day in so many ways, and people are coming forward to really shine the light here and tell the truth.
And I have another question. And look, I was in the military, so I'm not as familiar with the rank structure of police departments. But it seems to me, I noticed that when she was giving that testimony, it said Inspector Blackwell. And now when you met with her there, it said Assistant Chief Blackwell. It sounds like she's been promoted since her testimony.
Yeah, this is what's interesting. She's accusing us of malice and also, how this has affected her career. But she has been since promoted twice. She was at the time of her testimony. She was in charge of training for the Minneapolis Police Department. But you're right, she's basically the second in command now at the Minneapolis Police Department. In fact, in her career, she has even skipped over ranks from what we understand in the past. She started as a community service officer. But even since these court filings, they're pretty big, we're calling them bombshell court filings here. I've heard from former and current police officers as well, basically saying, sign me up. She did lie. And they would even now like to be a part of this court record. We also have a use of force expert who has went ahead and put together a declaration. In our case, we have a former FBI agent who says that this was part of their training as well. In all, this is about 113 pages, just our brief alone as part of our motion to dismiss.
So she's promoted multiple times. She skips ranks. She was the former training officer. I remember, by the way, this testimony. I remember watching this case. I don't even think I missed a single minute of the entire thing. And I certainly remember being very confused when I saw that testimony, because I remembered that you could find the training guides online. You didn't have to go to the, yearbooks and things like this. It was right there publicly available for anyone to see that the restraint that was used was exactly as trained. Coming up on a quick break, but Liz, what is something that people should really think about when they're looking at this?
I think to watch closely here would be the next steps. We know that Derek Chauvin's new attorney, Greg Joseph, is his name. He's watching closely, and he has called this a very significant development in Chauvin's appeal.
So, all right, I think that's enough of that. But at this point, I mean, what do you think? We know that these officers that signed this testimony, both retired, are going to be attacked, and obviously the ones that are still active are going to be attacked even more. We actually did an X space with some of them. They're great guys. They're nice guys. I agree they should have did it earlier, but they're doing it. So I don't care. Better late than never. And they're out here and they're putting their names on the line. I'd love to see more of this. What do you think about these officers that are putting their names out there?
Well, I'm glad to see that the officers are actually banded together. I hope that this message transcends to the NYPD, that the rank and file has to get together and stand up at this point and say that we're not allowing an NYPD leadership to have a corruption probe. We're not allowing them to destroy this organization, the iconic NYPD. So we have to see that reflection. But what do we see? Mikey G, metal detector in Long Island, says exactly what I'm always saying here. Rocket fuel. Another promotion by Rocket Fuel. We see in law enforcement agencies in various blue cities throughout this country, right? And we know it because we see what's going on in Minneapolis. We see what's going on with the NYPD. We talked to Hector Bravo in California. We talked to various cops in LA as we build this network, and they all say the same thing. In these democratic cities, we see people of low integrity that are climbing through the ranks to getting promoted by Rocket Fuel because they can be manipulated and collaborate with the politicians. There's no doubt about it that Jacob Fry came out and said that training was not training by the Minneapolis Police Department, and there was a collaborated effort with the upper echelon of the police department to hide this and put the blame completely on Derek Chauvin, and for that, she was promoted by Rocket Fuel. I'm probably getting a lawsuit from her too. Bring it on. I could care less.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Chief Blackwell deploying the tactic that she never saw or heard of or had no idea that was part of the training. So if you look closely, that's her. It appears she's either a sergeant or they may have a corporal rank at that time. But this is her doing this during a protest with a resistant perpetrator. So although Juju loves to inflect race in here, you could see she is a white officer deploying this on a white male. So it's not, the training wasn't done based upon the color of the skin. And if anything, this exonerates the whole situation of it being racist, because here you are. It's being deployed non-discriminatorily because it was part of the training. So to me, I'm still in the part where I believe integrity needs to be restored in policing, and we're not there yet. I'm sorry. The NYPD, Minneapolis, the fact that this woman's a chief and walking in, the fact that she's hiding from Liz is disgusting to me. She can't answer questions. Again, not real people. This is disgusting. And then we're going to sit here and wonder why we have problems with community and policing. We have cowardly, spineless liars as leaders. Who trusts them? Their own rank and file don't trust them. Their own members don't trust them. We're going to leave it up to the public to trust them? I don't trust these people. I don't want these people policing me. I don't want them policing my family, my children. I don't want them policing anyone. I don't trust them. God knows what they'll do. You'll get up on the stand and say anything under oath before God. What else are you capable of? You're capable of anything to me at that point. It's a non-negotiable. I hope to see Chief Blackwell in jail. And by the way, that goes for the rest of you in the NYPD. Any of you that I catch lying on your testimony, and the fact that no one has came forward after my video, just letting you know you haven't reached out to that officer's lawyer. I am going to be doing a monologue. I'm going to walk exactly through your entire testimony. I'm going to reveal your name, your shield number, everything else, everything about your record. It's all public record, and you could do whatever you like too, because you've probably been promoted since too. So yeah, absolutely ridiculous. Here she is. She never saw it. She knows nothing about it. Here's Katie Blackwell.
Exactly. Another promotion by Rocket Fuel of people of low integrity, people that can be manipulated by politicians. We see it. It's been a blanket operation throughout this entire country. Kaz Daughtry is a prime example of that in the NYPD, and so is Chief Blackwell. Let's skip ranks. Let's promote these people by Rocket Fuel. We now own them. They're in bed with the politicians, and they're going to do exactly what we tell them to do. When it's time to bury their rank and file, they'll do it. And you know what? And you know what's a shame, John? It's not hard to find these people. They're all over the police department. So seeing these cops band together, saying the truth, is a blessing in disguise. It's actually it's a breath of fresh air. I want to see the cops in the NYPD stand together and say, "Hey, we have a problem that Ed Caban's brother, former police commissioner, has security detail. We have a problem that there's a corruption probe going on right now. We have a problem that the rank and file is paying for the appearance of impropriety. We have a problem of this excessive overtime that was abused at the administrative level at one police plaza when it could be utilized for cops that are working in the streets. And it could have been spread sharingly throughout the cops instead of them being so exhausted, working so many hours. This is ridiculous. While other members of the service are getting overtime from their homes. Absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely. And here you go. Here's Minneapolis police officers in the academy training the exact tactic. So absolutely disgusting. One thing I just want to go back on, I had just received an email. Again, I'm not verifying any of this, and I'm not saying if we were wrong, we were wrong. I don't believe we are. But I'm just going to read what I wrote, what I just got sent. Love the show, but you guys are getting a few things wrong. The current deal ended on December 9th, 2021. We are out 3 years and 1 month. You guys are saying we are out 5 years. That's wrong. When Mullins was stealing, Paul Coppa, whatever, was the treasurer, rubber stamping all the checks, not Smalls. I don't believe we said that Smalls was the guy, although I do believe that he was the treasurer.
We never said that.
I don't think that we said that at all. But I do believe that he was. So, I could be wrong about it. I don't know. I'm not sure. So if this is you, Ed, I don't know. This guy was fired 1 month after the scandal? I don't remember that. I'm not saying that these guys deserve to be where they are, but that's the truth. 3, the turnout yesterday was good. The media coverage the union hoped for from it was not. I don't think that the turnout was good, so we disagree with you. I think Eric agrees with me. That was a turnout of paid union members, not union paying due members. So most important, you guys are right. There's only one way to get through this, and it's through give back. But rather than give back what we have, they are letting Office of Labor Relations dictate what the give back is. Zeros. That said, we should give back. The answer is time. Each rank gave back. Monsters in previous deals. Captains gave back cash OT for a huge raise. That gave them the biggest jump from rank to rank. Let's give back years of chart days to keep their amount of steps from top A. The SBA is only the union that has not given up time as a give back for pay. Very few sergeants are tier 2 anymore. Most are tier 2A or 3, and as such do not benefit from actually accruing substantial amounts of time. True. It has been suggested at meetings before to give up only time for the contract to get done. Vinny never gives a straight answer. Giving back time we can't use is the answer. So it's just another sergeant who's disgruntled about it. And like I said, if we got anything wrong and I could fact check it, we'll do it. I don't think we even said who was the vice president or who was the treasurer. So I don't believe we named anybody. We just said that they moved forward. Either way, they were on the board. I wasn't just talking about the vice president and the treasurer. I think the entire board should be removed. They should have voted no confidence. I have no confidence in them. If you do, hats off to you. Good luck.
That's what we said, right? We said, Patrick Donahue had said earlier that some of the board officers are really good, that the president should be responsible. What we were saying was that they're all compromised and they should be all held responsible and accountable. It takes a collaborative effort on the union to actually negotiate these contracts, not just the president, right? They need everyone involved to actually vote on these things along the members. So, yeah, they're all compromised, no doubt in my mind.
One last segment. I know we've been going a while, but this dude always irks me, and I can't stand him. He literally boils my blood. I cannot stand this guy. I cannot believe that he is a voice at all for anybody. I cannot stand Chris Cuomo. If I ever see him, it's probably not going to be good. So here's Chris Cuomo, height of 2020, because he put something out today, and it's just every time he speaks, it makes my blood boil because he's the ultimate liar. And yet people paint him out to be a moderate. And now he's sitting there and talking about common sense crime. Chris Cuomo is the biggest scumbag I've ever seen or heard. He will say and do anything for $1. He's a phony. And send me whatever messages you like, Chris. You're a phony bastard. This is Chris Cuomo, height of the pandemic.
It's tough. And, it's not doing great with my hair. I have to be honest. It's tough to keep hair the way I want it to look. You look like you've been cutting your own hair, which some people are good at, some people are not. So I've chosen to wear a hat because I don't want to butcher my own haircut. But it's going to be a long slog. But now that I know the fight that I'm in for, I'm more comfortable. That night, I got hit with fever and those rigors, spelled like rigors, R-I-G-O-R-S. But it was like out of a movie. I tell you, I had the hallucination. I was seeing Pop. You came to me in a dream. You had on a very interesting ballet outfit, and you were dancing in the dream, and you were waving a wand and saying, I wish I could wave my wand and make this go away. And then you spun around and you danced away.
Well, that's there's a lot of metaphoric reality in that one. I thank you for sharing that with us. It was kind of you. I know that.
So I'm just going to say it right now. Chris is pretending that he has COVID, and he's lying about a dream that he had, and he's abusing all of us while him and his brother can't even look him in the face, and he's looking down and trying to get away from this conversation. Chris is the ultimate liar. This is when he pretended he was locked in his basement. Eric, do you think that Chris is being forthcoming about his dream, or do you think that he's just being a complete lying buffoon to his brother? on national TV and making them both look like a disgrace that they are.
I hate this guy. That's the bottom line. I can't stand him. I can't stomach him. I think you know what? Jim Walden was on yesterday. So Jim, if Cuomo decides to run, here's a video for you. You should constantly play this over. I just can't stand him. I can't stomach him. You got another video? I can't. Everything he says is just full of shit.
And I'm sorry. And this is what sparked me up this morning. Somebody sent this to me. Chief Nerd put this out, a handle on X. This dude is the ultimate phony. So, his hair's probably went to Turkey and got the plugs in his hair, and he's probably all jacked up on his hormones. He still doesn't look that great. So a lot of plastic surgery and trips to Turkey. Maybe him and Adams took the plane, or him and Adams guy, Frankie boy, took the plane over there to get their plugs.
They got some good accommodations.
Yeah. So here we go. This is what sparked the reason I had to play this, because this dude just irks me. This dude will say or do anything for money. I don't know who this dude is.
So no, I'm not going to be able to cover the world the way CNN can. But whatever I'm covering, my reporting, what I know, my sources, I'm okay. A lot more than these guys on digital media. I mean, are you kidding me? They're not reporters. They don't have sources. That's why they go with some sources and they take it from other places. And then they package it in an opinion, which is fine. But the idea that they are at an advantage against the Wall Street Journal because they cherry pick every time somebody gets something wrong.
So first of all, he's talking about what we're doing. He's saying that our sources that are actual people on the ground are no good. It's him. It's Chris Cuomo knows everything because he's propped up by the corporate mainstream media. It's Chris Cuomo, right? With his podcast that nobody listens to and nobody watches, yet it has millions of dollars behind it to back him, right? And so what he's saying here is, don't listen to these other independent voices. Listen to me, who will do whatever I'm told to say. What do you think about what he just said then?
This is just a total insult to every American right here. That's what he's saying. Real people don't matter. You got to listen to the paid you got to listen to the paid people that give you bullshit. That's what he's saying. Don't listen. Yeah, well, they have a right to an opinion, but that's all it is, right? They don't have real perspective. That's what he's saying. It's just an opinion, not real perspective at all. But that's Chris Cuomo. I mean, this guy is full of shit. He'll flip-flop anytime. He should be friends with Adams. He flip-flops on everything. I can't stand this guy. I think I had enough of watching him already.
No, but it gets better. Oh, this is just good. So I didn't care about this.
I think I'd rather watch Charlie on the Parkway.
Oh, Charlie on the Parkway is, I mean, you can't compare. Charlie on the Parkway blows Chris Cuomo out of the water any day. I'll watch Charlie on the Parkway videos until tomorrow. I
got to read this, though. This is hilarious. GI Bro says, hey, listen, John, when the sergeants that get retro, do you know how many flights are going to be booked to Turkey?
Yeah, hysterical. I have a friend. He documented the whole thing. If anybody wants to know, it's actually not even plugs. They took hair from like the side of his head. It looks insane, dude. He was bald like me, good looking dude. I don't know. He just said he wanted hair. I was like, okay, whatever. And he has a full head of hair now. It's real hair too. He went to Turkey. He liked it. He was like, let's go. I was like, no, I'm good. I was like, I don't want to ever sit in a barber again. I'm good. But it actually is real hair. It looks crazy. If you've seen the before and after, it's nuts. And then not plugs. It's actually really hair. It grows. It's like, but I don't know what the hell they did to him. But so this is what really sparked me up, though. This is the segment that gets me. Listen to this bastard.
Like, you know how easy that is to do? How often do they get things wrong? How often are they half-truths? They want you to believe that the vaccine that Donald Trump got us faster than we could have ever gotten it otherwise, he says, and everybody seems to agree, the man they voted for and supported for president wound up producing something that's poison. The COVID vaccine kills. The COVID vaccine kills more people than it helped in any way. That's what they want you to believe. And you should have never been forced to take it. Now, by the way, I don't believe you were forced to take it. There was freedom of choice. There wasn't freedom from consequence for those choices. You got the government, Donald Trump, saying this is what we need to do it. And then you think you're going to get the same access everywhere if you don't do those things? And you don't think that the numbers show that when the vaccine came out and made it into the vulnerable communities, we didn't see a precipitous drop in the cases and in serious illness? I mean, it's not even a close call.
So first of all, he's painting issues that aren't even real. He's talking about fringe people that are saying that this thing is whatever the efficacy of it was, which was all debunked away anyway. But he's talking about the fringe. But the fact that he's sitting there and saying you weren't forced, there were consequences for not doing that. You were forced, dude. What are you talking? He's trying to back off of him and Don Lemon when they painted all of us as racist, all the cops as racist, when they said that we were all conspiracy theorists. We were danger to democracy for speaking the truth, for giving our opinions on anything, by the way. It didn't matter what it was. Didn't matter if it was the mandate. Didn't matter if it was the Floyd incident. This dude is the ultimate propagandist. So, Chris, if you're watching this, I only have one message for you. Here it is. Sit on this. You'll lose it.
I think Stephen S. Shout out to you, brother. Stephen S. Calls it right here. Perception management and propagandist. $ worshiper. Absolutely. That's the bottom line. He will flip-flop whatever it case is to get in the proper media to actually give bullshit information to get paid. And what he said right here is he's saying that people are giving out their opinion and they're not held accountable because they're just giving their opinion. They're not journalists. But yeah, you know what? You can make the same argument because there's been plenty of people on CNN that have been lied about stuff. And when they're asked, oh, how you getting away with that lie? Oh, we're not journalists, we're entertainment. So, don't point fingers when don't throw stones when you live in a glass house. Plenty of times we see plenty of journalists say, I can't be held accountable for that. I'm not really a journalist. I'm an entertainer. So which one are you, Chris Cuomo? Are you a journalist or you're an entertainer?
No, it's sick, dude. Last thing before we get out of here, I keep getting, I'm sure you've gotten it too over and over again, that they're taking all these FTU kids from the precincts and they're moving them down into subways. So, they're taking away from the manpower in the precincts. I don't know what to say about that other than that it's, you're going to have to rob from Peter to pay Paul, which is what me and Eric have been telling you is the result of this exodus, that they're lying. That's not occurring in the NYPD. And that is a huge failure on the part of NYPD leadership and New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Like I've been saying, this is the largest amount of police officers in history that have retired, vested, or resigned ever. We've never seen an exodus like this in history under this administration. So that happened under Chief Jeffrey Madry, Chief John Schell, Kaz Daughtry, Eric Adams. It just is what it is. It's just the truth of the matter. There's no debunking it. They won't release the numbers. The numbers tell the numbers tell the truth. And I could estimate what those numbers are, but they're not what the numbers tell you it is. I mean, transparency. The NYPD is about as transparent as Katie Blackwell was in answering Liz Collins' questions. So the other thing that I'm being told is that not only are they robbing from Peter to pay Paul, so they're moving these officers down into the transit system to, try to continue this perception management campaign. They're also keeping them on the roll call in the precinct. So it appears that the precinct staff and the transit staff. So I'm not shocked at all. Again, integrity matters. And again, it's just another proof of low integrity individuals who swore an oath, but didn't mean it. Some people swore an oath and uphold it. Some people swore an oath and just went about their day and just don't give a shit.
Listen, it's Comstat math. There's no surprise. It's manipulation, and it's a manipulation of statistics and crime stats, and it's easily done, right? Because we'll manipulate the actual manpower numbers of what's going on in the precinct, right? Showing that these people actually assigned to the command gives the illusion to community members, because community members want to know who's actually working. Hey, listen, we have full manpower. Here's who we have out there. But meanwhile, they're assigned to the subway. So what it will do on the subway with this major omnipresence of putting the cops out there, it will not stop crime. It will displace crime. It will remove some of that subway crime and push it into the streets and into the precincts. So I foresee we'll see a drop of crime in the subways, but look around in these precincts and we'll see a substantial amount of crime being increased in these precincts. So they'll have to try to find a way to hide some of those numbers and manipulate them in what they do. And how do they manipulate? They have crime analysis call these complaints constantly. Crime analysis, again, I've been forewarning the cops that are assigned to crime analysis, do not put yourself in these precarious positions to actually fudge numbers. Do not call these complainants and badger them and negotiate with them the price of stuff that's stolen if there's a robbery or items that they have. Do not do it. Don't put yourself in that position. You've seen it right now. The leadership lied in the fall of Minneapolis. The leadership lies at the NYPD. We have a network of cops throughout this entire country, and we can see it right now. There's a blanket operation of leadership lying throughout this country because they're in bed with the politicians. And if you allow it, it will happen to you.
Absolutely, people. So listen, I think that was a good Friday. We about 2.5 hours. We had about 1,100 people on here the entire time. We appreciate you guys for joining us this morning. We talked about the failures of the SBA contract negotiation, the failures of the PBA's contract negotiation. We broke down the PBA, why SBA members are in this position, the history of that. You guys could go back and watch this. We also spoke about cops, the need for integrity, how it's a non-negotiable. You guys could go back and watch that. And then at the end, we put the liar in chief, Chris Cuomo, up there, that loser. And yeah, I mean, I don't got anything else for today. You got anything else, Eric?
No, not at all. I think a great segment, good Friday. We hope everybody enjoys the weekend. We will see you Monday. We'll be back. Hey, listen, thank you so much to Juju, who's quite concerned about us. Juju says the process of buying podcast mics should be as difficult as getting a gun permit. Juju, I appreciate that you're here with us every day and you're watching and you're concerned about us. So maybe if you start giving us some coffee and donuts, we can afford to get ourselves mics. And apparently you want to make sure that you hear us louder and clearer. Juju, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for being a fanboy. You are the #1 fan for 2024. Thank you, Juju. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and Juju, just I don't mean to take overtime away from you, but if you just let your supervisor know that if he goes to YouTube, you could just hit and copy a transcript of the entire show without you having to type it in and put it into your DD5s. So, or your ISIS case for IAB. So you guys could just do that. So you don't have to manually type it in. You could just pull the transcript out. So just let your supervisors know. Sorry if that takes away from your overtime, guys. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And yeah, we're going to listen. Let's restore integrity in policing across this country. Let's get real conversations with real people who are unafraid to tell the truth. Let's make the truth great again. Ultimately, if we make the truth great again, we're going to make policing great again. We're going to make the NYPD great again. And we're going to make New York City great again. And we'll make America great again. So anything you want to leave us off before we go?
No, that's good. Friday, brother. Thank you, everyone. Friends, listeners to the podcast. Thank you so much for being with us yesterday when we had Jim Walden. We look forward to having other politicians or potential candidates on the podcast. 2025 is going to be a hell of a year. Let's keep growing. Let's keep building that network together. We have a network built around throughout this entire country right now. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. See you Monday.
All right, Chris Cuomo, take it in the face.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community, but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901 Blue. That's 888-901 Blue.